Previously on Higurashi wa Nekrai Kai, Chapter 7. As I'd expected, they didn't really take me telling them that they'd be killed on the night of the festival seriously. They did keep their promise to tighten up my security after I showed them the ritual storehouse. However, they haven't given one thought to their own safety. Oh well. Like I said, I didn't expect them to believe me.
いよいよなの。もうじきなの。
What's almost here? It seemed as though she couldn't wait for something to happen. There was a chilling allure to her strange smile that made one question if something exciting was really about to happen.
何がもうじきなんだい?
Tomitaki asked, trying hard to resist the temptation.
私の夢が叶う日がやってくるの。
まさか君は
そのまさかなの、二郎さん。
Tomitaki got up from his seat and looked Takano straight in the eyes. There was a faint glimmer of hostility within those eyes.
私より仕事が大事なの。やっぱり。
信じられない。君のことを信じていたのに。
Tomitaki was frozen in shock. The six men walked up to Tomitaki with no expressions on their faces. It was immediately obvious they were going to do something to harm him.
これは何の真似だ?
hinamizawa症候群は導火線に火がついた爆弾と同じ。それが爆発する前に東京はあなたに爆弾を解体してしまうことを命じた。でもね、東京にはこの爆弾が派手に爆発して欲しがっている人もいるの。
So there are people who want to see this thing go off. I was right.
この日君、君も寝返ったのか?
失礼しますね、富武ニードの。
二郎さんも鈍いわね。山犬は初めから私の部下よ。この診療所は最初から私たちが掌握している。知らないのはあなたと入江所長だけよ。
Was that why he committed suicide? He found out the truth behind this clinic? And the role he inadvertently played helping you assholes out?
くそ。
ではこれより終末作戦を開始します。
Well, as if I didn't need any further confirmation of what this whole thing's end goal was all along, with a name like that. It's just... What if Takano really is the culprit? If she is, then Okinogi is almost certainly involved too. Then it makes sense that he wouldn't want me to suspect Takano. But that would be horrifying. If Takano was my enemy, then the mountain dogs were too. This whole clinic is a lion's den.
打ち明けたいことはあります。でも打ち明ければみんなはもうhinamizawa沢でのんびりと暮らすことはできなくなるでしょう。私にとっての幸せはみんなと楽しく昭和58年6月以降も過ごすこと。だからこそ6月をくぐり抜けるためだけにみんなを巻き込んでも。
hinamizawa沢にのんびり暮らせなくなる？どうしてだよ。
打ち明けたことを知られたら奴らは必ずみんなを殺す。だから助けを求められない。
殺すって穏便な話じゃないな。まさかリカちゃん誰かに脅迫されてるのか？リカちゃんは悩みを打ち明けてくれたわけじゃない。でも何かに悩んでるのは間違いなく、それはかなり深刻らしいんだ。リカちゃんが俺たちを信頼してくれるなら、その時はどんな突拍子もない話であってもきっと信じてあげて力になってあげよう。きっとだぜ。
We all looked at each other and nodded. And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Higurashi no Kai Chapter 7. I'm still sitting here, reeling over how right I am about basically all the major points regarding my theories over the whole conspiracy in Hinamizawa that's been going on ever since Chapter 1, it seems. From how Takano faked her death, to the role she's played here, how she's had accomplices involved at the Irie clinic, the role that Rika's death will seem to play throughout the whole Operation Doomsday thing. The fact that there is an Operation Doomsday to begin with, and the fact that there is some people in Tokyo who apparently want to see this happen, along with Takano, and a whole other things that I know that were also explained in the last episode that I know I've also speculated on in previous chapters before. There's just only a handful of questions left that I have regarding the whole everything behind this, really, that I still need to solve. Like, okay, so Takano's, for example, Takano apparently has been wanting to see it since she was a small child. Why the hell is that the case? And, you know, other little minor details like that, along with bigger details like who exactly in Tokyo wants to see Hinamizawa basically nuked via panic and fear, and why? And, well, number one, perhaps the most important question of all, how the hell is everyone going to get out of this predicament, considering that there are some people all the way up within their government and or military who seems to want this whole village dead? Because, I mean, this isn't the work of just a handful of people here using little items that you can get at, like, hardware stores and all that here. This seems to be a full-scale paramilitary operation. By all appearances, we seem outgunned. Both figuratively and literally. So I just can't help but wonder. So, Keiichi, if you come to understand the full scale of what exactly is going on here, I'd be very interested to see what kind of plan you'll come up with this time. When I woke up, the first things I saw were Satoko and the calendar. The first one to wake up is supposed to tear yesterday's date off the calendar. Sometimes we both tear the calendar by mistake, so the date ends up 2 days ahead. Satoko likes to tear the calendar, and that makes her wake up early every morning. That would usually make me smile, but I felt devastated as soon as I saw the 22nd on the calendar. It's going to happen today. June 22nd. The day I die.
おはようなのです。
What's good about this morning exactly?
おはようございますですわよ、リカ。
Good morning, Satoko.
二人ともおはようです。二人？あらあら、まだ寝ぼけてるでございますの？
After images. My eyes are kind of blurry. Give me a minute to wake up.
さとこの他にもこの部屋に住んでいる人がいますのですよ。その人にもおはようを言いましたのです。もう朝から怖がらせるのはなしでございますわよ。
She's telling the truth, though.
これでさとこは今晩怖くて僕の手を握ってないと寝られないのです。
Well, how about that? I guess doom and gloom here has a use after all. Sometimes I feel like Satoko can see Hanyu, and it's as if the three of us are living together. That would be a lot of fun. It was time to go to school, but my body felt heavy. Today, I was going to die. Knowing that, I didn't even feel like going to school. The more I've repeated the same life, the more precisely I can detect my day of death. I always die on the day I feel this way.
リカ、そろそろ学校に行きますわよ。僕は今日はお休みしますです。リカ、圭一さんに聞きましたけど、何か悩み事があるって本当なんですの？あると言えばあるし、ないと言えばないです。
Come on, don't undersell it like that. What else is there left to do? Seek help from your friends, maybe? Today's the day. It's too late now. You're not dead yet. But part of me still feels like doing something. I'd listen to that part. I've been in this world only a few days. My emotions went up and down like a roller coaster. Sometimes I felt motivated to fight, and other times I felt desperate and gave up. Even though Keiichi and everyone else showed me such strength, I lacked the iron will to fight against my fate. The most confidence I ever felt was when the dice all came up 6, a fortunate coincidence that was just handed to me. I was hoping to gain the courage to fight against my fate, but here I am today, conceding to destiny. Hanyu's a bad influence on you. Keiichi told me that we can make a miracle happen if we work together. But there was something he didn't teach me. He didn't teach me how to believe in that. If I don't believe that I can make a miracle happen, I won't be able to make even a crack in the wall of fate. It seems so simple, yet so difficult. I couldn't even decide whether I should be on stage, or stay off and remain as a spectator. I told Hanyu that I haven't decided what to do after this world is over. But that's the spectator's point of view. For the people on the stage, this world is the only one. For them, the end of the world means the end of their lives. That's why they do anything to change their fate. That's why they can make a miracle happen. I never worked hard enough, because I always knew that I could reset my life. I thought I was just one pathetic girl who couldn't change her own fate. That's why I ended up here again today. It's as if I slacked off on my summer homework and woke up on the last day of vacation with nothing completed. What should I do? Should I not work on my assignment? No, I'm not going to make it on time anyway? Or should I do whatever I can, even though I may still get in big trouble? Perhaps a miracle will happen. Perhaps the homework will be done overnight. Miracles don't happen to homework. I'm sure I've made one happen once upon a time, even though I couldn't tell you the exact story because I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I have to do the homework on my own. Without effort, nothing will ever get done. Without effort, not even one question will be solved.
リカの好きなように過ごすといいと思いますのです。リカの大好きな窓際で甘いワインを飲むのもリカらしい過ごし方だと思いますのです。
Or, I could go consult my club members and have them do my bidding and save my buttocks along with everyone else's buttocks.
どうせ怒られるなら最後の一日も気ままに過ごそうという開き直りね。
For Hanyu, it's not about the homework. It's more about the vacation itself. And that is why she fails academically. The vacation will be over, no matter how much I want it to continue. In her eyes, it's pathetic for me to make a big deal out of not completing my homework, and contemplating whether I should still work on it or not. On top of that, I'm saying that I might as well die if my vacation is going to be over. If I was in her situation, I'd be laughing hysterically. Keiji told me to seek everyone's help in order to finish my homework. But I'm not taking that offer, not only because I don't want to cause them trouble, but also because I don't want the teacher to know that I got help from them. That's why you gotta be discreet. It's not like as though the mountain dogs can basically be in the same general room as you 24/7 or have bugs planted everywhere. Just think, where can you go where they won't be able to hear or see what you're doing? There's gotta be tons of places in this village where they can't follow. If I was going to have regrets, I should have worked on it from the beginning. If I had no intention of working on it, I should have just relaxed without stressing so much. If I didn't care what other people thought, I should have asked for their help in the first place. Those are the three options I talked about with Hanyu yesterday. I didn't choose any of them. I've been living for over 100 years, but I still can't decide. My 100 years were wasted.
さとこ、僕は今日風邪をひいてしまったのでお休みしますです。
Careful now. You might end up thinking that you're making a reference to Teppei or something. Okay, maybe not, but we'll see.
そうなんですの？体温計でお熱を測ります？今日はゆっくりさせてくださいです。知恵には僕は風邪で休むと伝えてほしいのですよ。リカ、本当に風邪なんですの？なんだか命を狙われてるような話をしているって圭一さんが言ってて、私本当に心配してますのよ。
Keep pressing, Satoko.
ありがとうです。もう行かないと遅刻しますですよ。
Satoko looked at the clock, then looked back at me again.
私は今すごく幸せですのよ。みんなと楽しく過ごせて、またリカと一緒に暮らせるようになってとても嬉しいんですの。だからリカがいなくなったら、私がどれだけ悲しい世界に生き続けなくちゃならないか、よく考えてほしいでございますのよ。
Perfect. Just let that little thought stew in her head. Plant it in the soil of her brain real good. Now just leave.
僕のいない世界。ええ。リカのいない世界なんて、とても辛くて悲しい世界ですわ。
Although I guess this seed could use a little extra fertilizer, so say what you will. I never thought about that. I thought that the world ended when I died. I never thought about the world after my death. That was never my concern.
だから、どうか自分をリカが思ってる以上に大事にしてほしいんですの。リカ一人の不幸じゃない。リカに悲しいことがあれば、私も、そしてみんなも不幸になることを決して忘れないでくださいますですのよ。
If only that's what happened in this village, then maybe everyone would have a relatively happier ending.
さとこ。リカ、今日はそっとしておきますけど、悩みがあるなら絶対に相談するんですのよ。仲間が悩んでいるのに自分を頼ってくれないこともまた悲しいんですから。
Satoko seemed like she wanted to say more, but she looked at the floor instead. I know what she's trying to say. I realize how selfishly I've been living. It was wrong for me to look at this world as a stage play. But it's too late. It's too late now. It's only too late if you think it is. You're still breathing. Get off that slacker butt of yours and don't follow Hanyu's example and work! Satoko left the house in a hurry. Hanyu and I were left alone inside the house.
僕もお邪魔でしょうから、リカが呼ぶまで消えていますのです。気が利くのね。100年生きても、リカはリカです。100歳の仙人にはなれないのです。リカには、年相応に悩んで、考える時間があってもいいと思います。僕がリカに背伸びを敷いたこともあるかもしれませんのです。羽生は悪くないわ。私が勝手に天狗になってただけよ。僕とおしゃべりしたいときは呼んでくださいです。もう泣きつかないの？私がこの世界で終わりにするのを撤回してほしいって。リカは頑固な人ですから、言えば言うほど逆効果になりますのです。さすが、付き合いが長いだけのことはあるわね。
I would really hope so, considering that this loop, that these series of loops that you've been on together has lasted over 100 years.
もうリカも悟っているようですから言います。今日です。悔いのない一日を。リカが何をしてもしなくても、朝が来て夏休みが終わるように、この世界も終わります。
Not if I have anything to say about it.
でも、リカが望めば、次の朝も訪れる。そして、それはまたしても、今年の6月かもしれないけれど、朝は朝。もっと小さい頃、毎日が退屈で、毎朝、起きても同じ日が繰り返されてるんじゃないかって思ったことがある。
Oh, the irony.
それが本当になるだけのことだしね。今日を有意義に生きてくださいとだけ言いますのです。これ以上は僕は何も言いませんのです。
Good girl. You earned a scoop of ice cream today.
多分今日だろうと思っていたけど、あんたにはっきりと言われると答えるわね。やっぱり終わるのね。今回も。
Only if you let it.
はい、今回も終わりますのです。
Don't listen to this Debbie Downer.
いつもと同じように。
Hanyu disappeared, and it went completely quiet inside the house. How should I spend my day? Well, I would spend it to begin with by talking to people. I hate to sound like a broken record here, but I really do think that is a very important first step you should take. And then everything else will follow once everybody starts talking and thinking together. How should I end this day? Should I work on my homework, knowing that I'm not going to make it on time? I only have half a day left. I have to do my best. I should think about what I can do. This world is supposed to be a happy place. People are enjoying their lives. I should have enjoyed my life more too. I don't mean that I don't mean in that I should have lived my life in blind optimism. It means I should have enjoyed my life by fully experiencing both happiness and sadness. If I did that, I wouldn't be as worried about what to do after my death. I should have simply lived with all my might. When the time comes, it'll be over.
今日を生きる。
That's a very important phrase. But it sounds meaningless when I say it, because I can repeat this meaningless life as many times as I wish. While Satoko was at school, I washed the dishes. I really wish you wouldn't just leave yourself alone like this. You could just make yourself very easy prey for the mountain dogs. Hanya would usually stay with me when Satoko wasn't around. But she's not here right now. It's been a while since I was all by myself. I never thought anyone could feel so lonely while washing the dishes. I'm going to die today anyway. This world is ending today. Why should I wash these dishes? That's because I'm thinking about Satoko, who will have to move on with her life after tomorrow. I will encounter a new Satoko in the next world. But I realized something after hearing what Satoko told me earlier. After I'm dead, I wonder how Satoko will move on with her life. The worlds that I've left in the past all went on without me. I wonder if Satoko will be able to cook without me. I wonder if she can go shopping on her own. I wonder if she can wash her clothes by herself. I've been avoiding thinking about this, but Satoko and my other friends must have been overcome by sadness. It's too late for me to think about this, but I started feeling like I want to cry. I'm feeling like this because I don't want to leave this world. This is the world that I've always wanted. It's my hope that I can continue to live on this world beyond June 1983. After a long journey, I finally ended up in this world. But I was able to truly live in this ideal world for only one night. The night of Watanagashi. This world will be shattered again after I die tonight. We finally saved Satoko, and all our friends assume that our happy life has returned. However, I'm going to die tonight. They will mourn for me. We worked so hard to make a miracle happen, but they're going to lose their happy world in just one day. Am I going to start a new life in the next world, as if nothing happened? I'd live 3 days in my new world, but three sad days were going to pass in this world. It's no good. I can't think straight anymore. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing from my eyes. I hugged Satoko's pillow and cried. I could smell her scent. After I die, Satoko will probably hug my pillow and cry just like this. Is everyone else going to cry for me too? I'm sure they will. And they'll be sad. Not about my death. They'll be sad, not because I'm dead, but because I never told them about what was troubling me so much. I wonder if they're going to feel regret. Of course they will. Which is why you gotta tell them while you're still breathing. You owe them that much. Especially after leaving them alone so many times in the previous worlds. Give these friends of yours a chance. Will they wonder what they could have done? Will they wonder what they could have done to open up my heart? What they could have done to help me in my time of trouble? Will they wonder what they could have done to save me? I felt miserable and frustrated. I held Satoko's pillow and continued to cry. And the next moment, I heard the phone ringing. I tried to ignore it, but it wouldn't stop ringing. I picked up the phone, hoping that my friends would call to check on me. However, I heard a weird guy's voice coming from the receiver.
どうも、おこのぎ造園と申しますが、古出さんのお宅でいらっしゃいますか？
You sure you're not mountain dogs in disguise?
おこのぎ
It was Okinogi from the mountain dogs. Yep! So that's the whole deal of the gardeners. It was the first time I'd received a phone call from him.
緊急のご連絡がしたくってお電話させてもらいました。学校にお電話したら今日は休んだと言われましたもので、具合は大丈夫ですかいね。
I'm not alright. This is the day I die. I knew he had no idea, but I still couldn't help but feel upset. Thing is, I'm sure he does have an idea, considering he's one of the people carrying out this Operation Doomsday.
風邪なのです。ちょっと今日はゆっくりしていますです。
そうですか。偶然とはいえ、それは好都合だったですね。
And why is that?
え
I had no idea what made him say that he was glad I was sick. I do. I think that he's probably thinking, oh boy, that means you're all alone. So snatching you will be very easy.
どうして僕が風邪をひくとおこのぎの好都合になるのですか。
いえ、実はあなたの命が狙われている可能性があるっちゅう連絡が入ってきたんです。
You taunting her now?
それはどういうことなのですか。
この度の富武氏たちの事件なんですが、東京の調査の結果、入江所長が黒幕である可能性が高いっちゅう連絡が入ってきました。
入江が黒幕。
This is the first time I've heard something like this. This isn't something that happens at random. It's the very first time. That means it's not just a coincidence. I'm hearing this now because of something that I did differently in this world. I've done many things differently in this world, though. I can't tell which decision led me to this result. Well, considering that he called your home phone, I would argue it's you staying home to wash the dishes that led to you receiving this phone call. However, maybe this is something that could change my life drastically. Okinogi continued to explain to me. There have been budget cuts to their research, and they were scheduled to be shut down within a few years. Iria was strongly against that, because he was embezzling their research money by requesting bigger and bigger budgets. Because they were going to cancel their research, he tried to sell the research data and make a lot of money off of it. Sure.
それは本当なのですか。
信じたくないでしょうが、事実ですね。まあ、入江所長はどこか後ろめたそうなところがありましたんよ。すったらんな感じでした。
You know all about suspicious considering you yourself are, wouldn't you? I think I can say with certainty that Irie is not that type of person. I've been around him for years, and as far as I know, he's not a bad guy. He doesn't even have the guts to be one. He pretends to be cold-hearted for the sake of his research, but he can't shake his regrets. He's simply a nice person. It's hard to believe that he was embezzling money from Tokyo. I'm starting to be suspicious of Takano, but she's actually a nice person too. Submit your evidence. She seemed mean at times, but she could also act as innocent as a child. Correct, she could act as innocent as a child. But that's the key word here, act. However, I'm starting to suspect her because Ushi told me that the body they found in Gifu might not be Takano's body. Okinogi works for Takano. That means I can't trust Okinogi. In other words, I can trust Irie, because Okinogi is clearly trying to set him up. On the other hand, if Takano isn't guilty, I could be making a huge mistake. Yet it always seemed to me as though Tomitake and Irie were good friends. If Tokyo had suspected that Irie was embezzling money from them, Tomitake would have treated him far more coldly. Anyway, at the very least, Tomitake of Tokyo didn't have such a bad impression of Irie. The Irie of the Irie Institute and Tomotaki of Tokyo were good friends. Tomotaki of Tokyo and Takano of Tokyo were good friends. Takano of Tokyo and Okinogi of Tokyo were superior and subordinate. But Okinogi of Tokyo says that Tokyo is suspicious of Irie. This doesn't make sense. Everyone seems to be good friends at first glance, but the links don't connect from start to finish. Irie thinks he has a positive relationship with Tokyo, but Tokyo is suspicious of Irie? That's just odd. The chain should be connected, but one of the links is twisted out of order. It's breaking the loop.
すでに東京が内定に着手してますんで、詳しいことはもうちょい待ってほしいそうです。また、入江はあなたを何らかの交渉の最後の切り札に使おうとしている可能性があるらしく、あなたに対する警護体制を本日よりさらに強化せよとの命令が来ました。それでご自宅にいられるんは都合がいいと言ったんですね。すでに古出神社の周辺は山犬が3交代、20人体制で警護に入らせていただきました。
Well, that's just great. We're surrounded.
もちろんご安心ください。それっちゃわからないように気を利かせてますんで。
すごい警護体制なのです。その警護はいつまで続くのですか？
東京から解除の命令が来るまでずーっとですんで、今回の一件が解決するまでです。
That should have been good news for me, since today was the day I was supposed to die. This is exactly the kind of security I wanted. That's why I let Takano into the ritual storehouse. However, I have a bad feeling about this. Tokyo should be my ally, but that arrangement is just like Irie's relationship with Tokyo. Everything seems in order from my end, but when you trace it the other way, it feels like something's off at some point. I have this uncomfortable feeling because I have a few uncertainties about Tokyo. Tokyo and Irie have strong ties, but they're suspicious of him? Is Irie actually a bad guy? Is Takano still alive, and she the one who killed Tomotaki? Those questions and more made me uncertain about accepting help from Tokyo. I thought Tokyo, as a single organization, would move with a single intention. But in reality, they had multiple, different intentions. In other words, there must be multiple. What's the word? I see in the political section of newspapers all the time. Parties? Factions? Organizations? Right, factions, there we go. Are there two factions in Tokyo? One that wants to remain friendly with Irie, and one that looks down on him? That would explain the irregularities I'm sensing. Maybe I've been talking to Ushi too much? If he hadn't told me that he was suspicious of Takano, would I have believed Okinogi without doubt? Well, maybe not. Even without Ushi's theory, Okinogi is still sound very suspicious. Irie was loyal to his research on Hinamizawa syndrome. Tokyo understood this, so his relationship with Tomotaki wasn't particularly strained. Plus, Irie isn't the type of person who would commit embezzlement. He's a law-abiding citizen with a good moral character. Of course he has some ambition as a researcher, but that only goes as far as common sense expects any researcher to. It's nothing like the criminal aspirations that would lead to major embezzlement. A great number of the mountain dogs were going to be guarding me. This is what I've been wanting in my previous lives. But for some reason, I couldn't be happy about it. I couldn't help but feel depressed. If this house is like an empty bird cage, then they'd be the fox with feathers stuck to its face. I don't know if I can really trust the people who are protecting me. I would try to recall more about Okinoki. The mountain dogs have been protecting me for years. Okinoki proved his skills in many of my other lives. To them, I'm something of a special existence. If something happens to me, it would be a disaster. The Irie Institute is there to keep Hinamizawa syndrome under control, and the mountain dogs are there to protect me from evildoers. So why would they try to betray me now? Think, girl. I thought about it for a while, but I had no idea. Think harder! I just know one thing for sure. I can't feel comfortable with the protection of the mountain dogs alone. I want someone other than Tokyo protecting me. But I bet such a person wouldn't believe me. Wait. What about Ushi? I've been keeping in touch with Ushi since the other day. He still thinks that the mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa are all plotted by the village authorities. If he believes that, then he might believe that my life is in danger. For him, I'm a special person with lots of useful information. The mountain dogs hate the police, though. When I asked them to assassinate Satoko's uncle, they refused because he was being watched by the police. I would feel relieved if the police were guarding me along with the mountain dogs. That way, the dogs wouldn't be able to harm me, even if they were working for an evil faction of Tokyo. Besides that, if my suspicions toward them turned out to be baseless, more protection couldn't hurt. I'm sure that double security will keep me safe. Well, it would certainly make it harder for the mountain dogs to get to you.
今日はおとなしくしていますです。
ええ、そうなさってくださるとうちらも助かりますんで。町へ繰り出して変なチンピラに喧嘩でも売られるとうちらも苦労しますん。
根に持たれているのです。
では、風お大事になさってください。
風の診察に診療所に行ってはいけませんですか？
万が一ということがありますんで、入江診療所には当分近寄らないでください。妙な注射でも打たれやすと大変ですかいね。
入江はそんなことしないです。
しないとうちらも思いたいですがね。その疑いが解けるまでちょいとしばらく慎重にしてほしいっちゅうこってん、安情ご理解をいただきたいんですわ。
すったらんしゃもないのです。
You lost your phone filter.
おこのぎもいつの間にかすっかり地元言葉になりましたです。
最初は普通の東京なまりだったです。直せと言われれば直せるつもりですがね。地域に溶け込むのが仕事ですから。
I finished speaking with him. As soon as I hung up the phone, I opened my phone book and looked for the number to the Okinomiya Police Department. It was nearly noon. It felt like the pages of the phone book were sticking to my skin. I must have been in a hurry. I really don't want to die. I want to stay in this world. I don't want to leave this perfect world. I'm trying to do something because I don't want to die. I'm trying to live with all my might. I'm trying to enjoy my life. For the first time, I was spending my last day positively, without drinking wine until I was drunk.
もしもし、大石です。お待たせしてすみませんでしたね。ちょいと今からお隣の県警に行ってこようとしてたところでした。どうもあちらさん話が通らないんで、直に襟首を掴んでゆすってやろうと思いましてね。
県警、高野の死体のことですか？
ねえ、周りは勝手に納得して高野の死体に間違いないって繰り返すんですが、それで直接行って見てこようと思います。死体が高野でないと分かれば 話は一気に急展開しますからね。高野を重要参考人として手配できます。幸い向こうの柔道部とは交流がありますので、お隣ちょいとみっちり話し込んできますよ。
It looked like Fuushi was proactively moving forward with the investigation. If that body is really is Takano, that would be sad for her, but would give me reason to trust the mountain dogs. If that's not Takano, then it would tell me that she's part of this whole incident. No matter what the result is, it will give me some kind of hint. But only if I'm still alive. But really, it's unfortunate. Wushi is leaving for Gifu. He can't be around to protect me.
大石、実は変な声の電話があったのです。知らない人でしたが、村人だと名乗りましたです。
匿名の電話ですか。続けてください。その電話は何と？
僕を殺そうとしている人たちがいる。早ければ今日にも決行すると言ってますです。
それは本当ですか。なるほど。それはありえない話じゃないな。わかりました。私はもう出発しなければなりませんので行けませんが、警官を何人か行かせます。駐在にも連絡してあなたの近辺を警戒するように伝えましょう。今日はご自宅ですよね。風邪か何かですか？家にいて戸締まりをしっかりしてください。すぐに警官を行かせます。
Well, at least we got some police
お
protection
い
now.
さん、どうしたんすか？先方との約束の時間ギリギリですよ。
今ね、フルでリカから電話がありました。匿名の電話があり、彼女の命を誰かが狙っているらしいと警告してきたらしいって言うんです。
フルでリカをですか？どうして？村のマスコットじゃなかったんですか？
連続開始事件絡みで私と接触してたことに対する警告じゃないかと見てます。本当に殺すかどうかは疑わしいが、彼女も年頃の子供です。命を狙われていると聞かされたら穏やかにはいられないでしょう。それにここで信頼を損ねると以後の関係にも支障をきたしますからね。2、3人でいいです。大至急行かせてください。あと駐在さんにも連絡して、とりあえず彼女を安心させてあげてください。
了解っす。
Rika Farud might have some kind of hint regarding the mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Ushi couldn't let her die.
私たちも現地の分からずやどもを締め落としたらすぐに南沢へ行きましょう。ちょいとハードな出張スケジュールになりましたよ。
こんなの楽勝っす。
こちらひばり。駐在警官が境内に入りました。
What kind of name is Skylark?
R 宅へ向かっています。
了解。引き続き監視されたし。
R と接触。警官を中に入れました。沖宮署に R から連絡があったようです。自身の身辺警護を依頼したと思われます。
Of course she got her phone bugged too.
うちらのことは喋ったんかいね。
命を狙われているとの匿名電話があったと言っています。作り話でしょう。またそれとは別に沖宮署から私服警官が数人派遣されるようです。
何年？山犬だけじゃ信用できんって国会ね。
厄介ですね。監視体制にも支障が出ます。
まさか気づいたんじゃねえんかね。そんなわけはないとは思うが、全般に職質に注意しろと伝達。疑われたら意味ないんね。暗情警戒しろっちゅう伝えてえな。
了解。本部より全般、古出神社周辺に警察介入の動きあり、職質には特に注意されたし、今夜の決行ですが様子を見た方がよろしいのでは。
連絡はするが三差はやるっちゅう言うだろうな。明朝に R の死亡が発覚して話が進むよう もうお膳立てが済んどるって話だ。警官に不審と思われとない。もし疑われたらおとなしを引くこっちゃん。
Ushi had called the officers pretty quickly. The officer who was in the area arrived within 10 minutes after I spoke with him. He asked me what kind of phone call I received today. I decided to make up a whole story. It'll be all over if they check on my call history, but I'm sure Ushi won't bother doing anything like that. He thinks I'm worth protecting, because I had information about the incidents in Hinamizawa. The policeman is one of the villagers, so I know him very well. More officers are coming here from the Okinomiya department. The officer told me to relax because he'd stay with me until then. Ushi must have thought I was frightened half to death after getting a threatening phone call. After about 30 minutes, 4 officers in plain clothes arrived at the shrine. The local officer returned to his police box.
状況は聞いています。神社周辺に我々が立ちますので、何かあったらすぐに呼んでください。あと、夕方になったら大石刑事がこっちに来ると言っていました。
I was relieved to learn that Ushi would be coming here.
どうかよろしくお願いしますです。
必ず一人がここの下にいますので、すみませんが、その者にお手洗いだけは貸してもらってもよろしいですか？あと、緊急時用にその者に合鍵を預からせることはできますか？
どうぞです。おトイレも貸しますです。
My house is on the second floor of a storage building. The first floor contains emergency supplies for the village. I'm happy to know that at least one officer will be there for me. The officers confirm their positions on the map of the shrine. One will be in the storage building, and 2 more will walk around the shrine property. Also, 1 more officer will be standing in front of the stairs that lead to the shrine. This world's Ushi is certainly reliable. In my other lives, Ushi tended to look at me as his enemy. However, in this world, he thinks I'm on his side. I'm sure it's because we all became friendly with him around the time we saved Satoko. It was unfortunate at the time, but perhaps the return of Satoko's uncle was a necessary event. If Okinogi was right about Irie, he wouldn't be able to come near me with 20 mountain dogs and 4 police officers protecting me. If Okinogi is the bad guy, they'd be discouraged from acting by the presence of the police. Not too different from giving garlic to a vampire. This is the best protection I've had in 100 years. Even so, am I still going to be killed tonight? I need to do whatever I can. I should struggle as hard as possible. I won't give up. I won't even think about my next life. This is what enjoying life is all about. This is what living seriously is all about.
羽生、いる？いますのですよ。どう思う？今回。確かに、僕もこういう展開はあまり見た記憶がありませんのです。今回はひょっとしてって思うことはやっぱり罪なのかしらね。僕は期待も失望もしませんです。ただあるがままに訪れる結果を眺めるのみです。
Spoken like a true academic failure. Hanyu was still acting like a bystander. I knew she was going to say something like that, but part of me was hoping she would say something more positive. Why would she? She's an academic failure. Upon hearing her say what she did, I felt a little disappointed, and wondered why Hanyu refused to be anything but an onlooker. I always thought it was normal for her to be that way because she's a special existence. I also convinced myself I had to be an onlooker too, since I was a similar being. However, I can't just let go of everything and become a bystander. I can't become like her. I can't stop hoping for a better life for Rika Farud. That hope was betrayed so many times, and my heart was crushed countless more. That's why I stopped expecting anything to turn out the way I wanted. So, is Hanyu the same way?
羽生も傷つくのが嫌で期待することをやめた。
I've only lived for 100 years, but I know how frightening it is to have high expectations. Hanyu should also be aware of that, since she's lived far longer than me. I always thought that Hanyu was a special existence. But except for the fact that she's invisible, everything about us is the same. She has the same thoughts and feelings as everyone else, yet I still saw her as a special existence. That's why I just assumed that her mind worked in a different way.
僕はリカに比べて長くを生きすぎましたのです。喜びより悲しみが後に残り、期待すれば裏切られる方が多いことを知りすぎてしまいました。だからもう何が起こっても心を傷つけたいと思わないのです。
I guess that's understandable.
だから今回の世界でも期待しないのね。私がひょっとするとこの運命から逃れられるかもしれないという期待を。羽生は私がどうせまた失意のうちに殺されると思ってる。そんなことは思ってないのです。
Hanyu looked uncomfortable. That is what you're thinking, though. She had no doubts that I'd be killed again that night. That's what it means to not have hope. But she just can't own up to it, because she doesn't want to hurt my feelings.
羽生も聡子と同じなのね。何かの幸運か、誰かが助けて奇跡を起こしてくれるまで耐えて待っているだけ。戦うことを恐れているだけよ。それを強さだと勘違いしている。つい最近までは私もそうだったけどね。
Hanyu looked down and bit her lip. She couldn't deny what I said.
あんたも何度も聞いてるはず。奇跡ってのはみんなで団結しないと起こせない。団結というのはつまり信じること。みんなで信じないと奇跡は起こせないのよ。
What I just said sounded as though I was blaming her for the miracle not happening. Maybe I was too harsh to her. I stayed quiet, and Hanyu continued to look at the floor, shaking. Then she looked up at me and spoke. I noticed sadness, but also a little bit of anger in her eyes.
触れることもできず、話すこともできない。見ているしかできない僕も、そのみんなに含まれるのですか？リカに、どんな顛末も見ていることしか許されなかった僕の気持ちがわかるというのですか？
There was a slight severity in the tail end of Hanyu's speech. Except for me, she can't communicate with anyone in this world. She hates to be reminded of that.
ごめん。やめましょう。この流れは喧嘩になるわね。自分が殺されるまでの貴重な時間をあんたと喧嘩して過ごしたいとは思わないわ。僕もリカと喧嘩をしたくはないのです。でもこれだけは言わせて。私とあなたは友人だと思ってる。だから友人の人生が乗るか反るかという時に期待しないとかあるがままを受け入れるとか。そのことは謝りますのです。でも期待するかしないかは僕の心の中で好きにさせてくださいなのです。
She can be very stubborn sometimes. Honey seems weak on the outside, but she actually has a very strong moral code, one that she wouldn't bend for anything. She apologized to me, but she wasn't being honest. She still wasn't expecting anything good to come from this world. She still thinks that I'm going to die pitifully. That's why she refuses to believe in miracles. I've been living with her long enough to read her mind. I feel bad for her in a sense. She's been living too long and lost all her hope. Hanyu told me to call her if anything else happened, and soon disappeared. I'm sure she's still around. She's probably still watching me, as if she's watching a TV show. The time of my death is slowly approaching. Will I be able to survive this time? It's been a long time since I faced this fear without drinking wine. I was left with nothing else to do after washing the dishes and cleaning the room. The mountain dogs and police were protecting me. Just in case, I figured I should leave something behind for Satoko. Should I write down some recipes for her in the notebook? Will she be happy if I leave a will for her? I laughed at my own foolishness. No one would be happy to read a will. You'd be surprised. If I die, they'll be devastated and wonder why I didn't talk to them. That's exactly how I felt when Satoko didn't ask for any help when her uncle was abusing her. I wonder, will I be killed before Satoko even comes home? My memories of those days are never very clear. The day I die is always vague in my recollections. It's fine if I'm murdered before Satoko gets home. But if I'm murdered after, then would they kill her along with me? I don't want that to happen. It's bad enough already that I end up killed. If Satoko's murdered along with me each time, that would be too much to bear. Just how much have I ignored other people's sadness with that rash idea that the world ends when I die? Thinking about that made me feel truly ashamed of myself. I turned on the TV to try and reduce the silence, but it didn't help at all. Worse, not only did the TV not help my fears, it felt like it symbolized Hanyu and my allies, making me feel even more unpleasant. It was past lunchtime, nearly 3 p.m. School should be out soon. I'm not there today, so they probably won't do a club activity. Satoko should be home shortly. Seems I'm going to survive until she gets home after all. If she comes home and asks me what's troubling me, I might end up telling her the truth. If I talk to someone, that person will be demoned away by the mountain dogs. That's why I've never spoken to anyone about it. I didn't want my friends to get into danger. But if Satoko was also murdered likewise in every world because she was involved with me, then we're doomed to share the same fate. It's better to know the truth than to be killed without knowing what's going on. But I'm under very strict security right now. I might be able to survive in this world. If that's the case, I shouldn't talk to Satoko about it. I still say you should anyway, even if you do survive. It won't be so easy to talk to my friends after all. Moments later, I heard a surprised yell of Satoko's coming from downstairs. She'd returned. It sounded like she was scared to see a stranger in our home. I'd have to tell her that the police were here. That would be tantamount to telling her that someone is out to kill me. I don't know how to explain it to her, or how much I should tell her. However, my thoughts were soon interrupted by the noise of a crowd. A crowd? Satoko hadn't come home alone.
ただいまでございますのよ。それよりリカ、下のおまわりさんは何なんですの？
私服警官が護衛してるなんてどういうわけよ。あんた一体何をしでかしたの？
Maybe I set fire to a tree somewhere?
みーちゃん聞くこと違う。一体何があったのリカちゃん。
境内の中にも見慣れない人がいました。
Although I suppose if you could get Rika on anything, it would be underage drinking.
あれも私服警官ですか？ただごとじゃないんですけど。
俺たちリカちゃんが何を悩んでるのか知らないが、でもどうやらそんな悠長な事態じゃねえようだな。
I couldn't stop laughing upon seeing everyone rush into my house all asking the same questions. It made me feel as though being depressed all day had been just a waste of time.
リカ、笑ってる場合じゃありませんでしたよ。どういうことなのか説明してくださいまし。どうもこうもないのです。今日は僕が殺される日なのです。はぁ？
Everyone already knew that I'd been telling people about how I was going to be killed, but they were surprised to hear it from my own mouth.
なあリカちゃん、俺は確かに昨日リカちゃんから聞いた。自分は誰かに殺されるみたいな話をな。でもそれはリカちゃんの冗談みたいなもんだと思ってた。だがな、もうごまかすのはなしだぜ。話してもらうぜ。
Keiichi spoke of a harsh tone, as though I'd made him upset. Well, you did. As my friend, he must think that it's unforgivable that I didn't talk to him about it. He wasn't the only one feeling that way, though. Every single one of them was looking at me with worried expressions on their faces.
リカ、私はみんなに助けてもらいましたの。だから私もみんなのために何かの助けをしたいんですのよ。気持ちだけで嬉しいのです。リカが自分で私に言いましたのよ。戦う勇気を持てと。あなたは自分でそう私に言っておきながら実践していないではございませんの。
Satoko pointed out something that I've already realized. I'm bad at following my own advice. I had no way to argue back.
リカちゃんは話せば巻き込まれるって言ったんだよね。リカちゃんが話さなくても私たちは巻き込まれる気でいるんだよ。
そうさ、俺たちは仲間で部活のメンバーなんだよ。リカちゃんの危機はメンバー全体の危機さ。かつてサトコが危機だった時もメンバー全体の危機として戦った。それと同じだよ。
命を狙われるとか物騒な話になればますます園崎家の出番だと思いますけれど、それこそ物騒な話に及ぶなら警察より頼もしいですよ。ねえおね。そうだよ、こういうことこそ相談してほしいね。何をトラブったの？リカちゃんを殺すって脅迫するなんてとんでもない野郎だよ。
まあリカちゃんの口の重さを見る限り心当たりがないのか薄いのかのどちらかだな。相手が分かってりゃ楽な話なんだからな。
みんなは鋭いので、僕が何も話さなくても勝手に話が進んでしまうのです。リカ、はぐらかさないでほしいですわよ。 ちゃんとお話しなさいませ。一体何があったんですの？これはどういうことなんですの？警察が来るなんてよっぽどのことですのよ。警察には話せて、どうして私たちには話してくれませんの？
Well, to be fair, they have shiny badges.
私たちには話しにくい理由なの？理科に話しにくいようなやましい理由なんてあるわけありませんでしたよ。
Oh, if only you knew. If only.
落ち着け、聡子。リカちゃんはこう見えても御三家の当主なんだぞ。お社様の生まれ変わりなんて呼ばれて、年寄り連中に盲信されてるんだ。俺たちの想像のつかないところで何か厄介なことに巻き込まれていたということもあるかもしれない。そういうゴタゴタをこれからこの村で楽しく過ごしていこうっていう俺たちに話したくなかったとか。
Perceptive.
そういうのじゃないのか？
村とリカちゃまに関わるヤバい話ですか。となると、お社様を盲信する年寄り連中の絡みとしか思えません。
It's a lot worse than that, I'm afraid.
ってことは、時期的に考えて、お社様のたたり関係か。
In a matter of speaking, yes it does.
あれだ。富武さんと高野さんが殺された件絡みじゃないかな。
どうして富武さんたちが殺された事件がリカちゃんに関連して、リカちゃんが命を狙われなくちゃならないの？
Well, I'm sure you can help explain that, Rika.
話が突飛すぎるよ。
命が狙われてるって時点で十分話がぶっ飛んでる。俺たちが普段知る以上のしがらみがリカちゃんにあって、それを話せないってことなんだろうな。ビンゴだろ。あまり楽しい話じゃないから、むしろ仲間には話せないってんだろ。
信じられないですわ。本当なんですの、リカ。何か村とか富武さんたちの事件とかそういうのが関係していますの？
I remained silent, but with my mouth open. I hadn't answered any of their questions, but they continued to ask, and had eventually hit the nail on the head. It was more surprising than anything. But then again, these are, after all, my beloved clubmates. I laughed once more. My issues and my secrets are so devastating to me, but they stopped sounding like such a big deal when everyone talked about them together. They knew exactly what was going on without me saying a word. In that moment, I realized just how powerless I am. I had to tip my hat to them. Everything seems so foolish now. And so I decided to just tell them everything.
話せと言うなら話しますです。でも、どうせ信じられませんのです。
信じるさ。リカちゃんが真実を語る限り、俺たちは疑わない。
Everyone's expressions turned grave as they vowed not to make light of anything I told them. And so, I'm going to tell them everything. I want to see if they really will believe me or not.
なら、話します。多分、私は、富武と高野を殺した犯人に狙われています。
ってことは、それって連続開始事件の真犯人ってこと？
それはわかりません。ですが、その可能性もあります。意味がわかりづらいですわね。どうして富武さんや高野さんを殺した人がさらにリカも殺さないといけませんの？
Ushi thinks Takano is the culprit. Okinogi thinks that Irie is the culprit. Either way, it sounds like someone from Tokyo is trying to kill me. I can't tell if it's Takano or Irie, but I do know that to them, I'm like a trump card. In order to explain everything, I need to talk about the relationship between Hinamizawa, Tokyo, and the Irie clinic. I don't think they'll believe me. It's such a ridiculous story. But who would ever believe it if not for my friends?
話せばみんな巻き込まれますです。いいのですか？
いいに決まってるぜ。リカちゃんが巻き込まれた時点ですでに俺たちも巻き込まれているんだからな。
Everyone nodded at Keishi's words.
では話しますです。
I'm going to see how everyone reacts. I'm going to ascertain what friendship is all about. With a nod of my own, I opened my mouth and began to explain.
Hinamizawaにはある特別な病気があるのです。その病気の名前は仮なのか正式なのか分かりませんですが、Hinamizawa症候群と呼ばれていますです。
Everyone glanced back and forth at each other when I mentioned the term. They'd never heard of it before. The name Hinamizawa syndrome has actually been around since before the war. It's the general term for the severe homesickness and mental instability that people from Hinamizawa experience when outside the village. People in Hinamizawa have refused to leave the village since the era of Onikafuchi. The villagers believed that they'd be cursed by Oshiro-sama if they left, and people who did often come back because of that curse. In general, it used to be thought of as only severe homesickness. But during the war, soldiers from Hinamizawa became mentally deranged in faraway places. That does sometimes happen in war. What was unique about the soldiers from Hinamizawa was the way that they killed their own comrades who committed suicide at the end. One doctor became curious about these cases and studied those soldiers. That's when they found out it was actually a disease only found in Hinamizawa. According to this doctor, their strange behavior was not the result of their culture. It was a mental disease triggered by external circumstances. A mental disease with an external cause is different from a psychological illness. It is the result of some kind of physical disorder, and it causes people to become mentally unstable when something triggers it. There are 3 categories of externally caused mental diseases: traumatically induced, substance abuse induced, and chemical balance induced. And I take it that our Hinamizawa syndrome bug works by chemical imbalance, yes? Traumatically induced soldiers are cases resulting from damage to the brain from trauma or infection that influences the mind. This is the reason personalities can change as a result of head injuries. Substance abuse, as the name suggests, refers to cases where drugs, especially alcohol or stimulants, have influenced the mind. The last category is chemical imbalances. These are cases where some ailment in the patient's body causes abnormal secretions of bodily chemicals, which then influence the brain's functions. It may sound odd, but it's been said that people tend to become depressed when they have a cold. We've all experienced the ways in which physical sickness can cause a buildup of negative emotions. However, with chemical imbalances, the cause is more direct. People's emotions aren't born from our hearts. Everyone should know, logically, that they're the result of chemicals secreted by the organs in our body as necessary. So when the organs operating the secretion of those emotional controllers malfunction, it causes them to secrete abnormal amounts. The thyroid gland, for example, secretes hormones that regulate emotions. When that gland is defective, the balance of those hormones becomes unstable. This could cause people to not only have a physical sickness, but also a mental sickness, such as depression. People don't get mentally ill just because of mental problems. Human beings are made out of meat. We get mentally ill when that meat is defective. The doctors studying Hinamizawa syndrome also came up with a theory. He suggested that there is a pathogen endemic to Hinamizawa that, if its hosts stray too far from home, affects the chemicals in their brain and causes them to hallucinate. The villagers' belief in Oishiro-sama is certainly related to this endemic disease. People in Onikafuchi village knew about this syndrome. They knew that they couldn't survive outside the village. They also didn't want anyone else to enter the village because they would get infected too. They took this disease as a curse, not a sickness. The most significant symptoms of this disease are antisocial behavior and an extreme persecution complex. I am being proven right once more, and it feels so good. The eventual suicide caused by defects in the lymph nodes are also another unique characteristic. The unusual behavior of terminal patients is what inspired the legend of the demons coming out of the swamp and attacking the villagers. Basically, sick villagers developed severe persecution complexes and wound up killing other villagers. After a long time, survivors of the disease started to comprehend its rules. They discovered that the disease is incurable once you contract it. That's why they started barring outsiders from entering the village. Also, once you become ill, you will begin developing a persecution complex. This can happen to anyone in the village. The doctrine of Oishiro-sama says that the blood of humans and demons was mixed together, and that Oishiro-sama has control over the violent blood of demons. People said that you'd be cursed if you didn't follow Oishiro-sama's rules. That could also be understood to mean that as long as you followed Oishiro-sama's rules, you could cope with this endemic disease. This is what was meant by the scripture in Oishiro-sama's legend that said they appeared, unified the humans and demons, and made them live together in this village. Then there was the most important part. The rules to prevent symptoms from appearing. Those rules are the taboos, and people were strictly taught that Oishiro-sama would curse them if they broke those rules. The horrible bloody traditions of the village were probably performed in order to force people to respect these taboos. There are several ways to keep the disease under control, but there are two main conditions for doing so. The first one is to prevent suspicion. When the villagers are suspicious of someone, it can trigger their persecution complex, which can lead to them developing terminal symptoms. Hence what happened with Keiichi in Chapter 1 and even with Chapter 1. He became highly suspicious of the village and thus it triggered his persecution complex. That's why they made sure to have such a tightly knit community, so that people wouldn't suspect each other. Since the terror of Oishiro-sama's curse is emphasized, many don't know this, but she's also a god of marriage and neighborly love. That would also confirm, I think this would also confirm my theory regarding how Rika's death would cause the villagers to basically grow suspicious of each other. Because over the past 5 years, it's been established that the curse of Oishiro-sama follows a specific pattern, going after very specific people. Then Rika's death comes along and throws that entire understanding right out of the window. So not only would it cause mass confusion, it would cause everyone to be suspicious of each other and wonder who in this village killed Rika. And thus, as described here, it would trigger their persecution complexes, thus beginning a village-wide infection. It's a really diabolical plan, if you think about it. However, this condition is not as important as the other one. Indeed, Oishiro-sama isn't even recognized as a god of friendship in Hinamizawa anymore, and is only worshipped as such in Okinomiya's Hirasaka district. Now, for the other condition. This one is much clearer, and was practiced more strictly. If the villagers leave Hinamizawa, they will fall ill quickly, proportional to the distance from the village. Villagers nowadays will not get sick as rapidly, even if they leave town or even go out of the country for a long time. However, long ago, they would fall ill as soon as they left the village. It's very unfortunate that Keiichi got infected soon after he moved to the village. Very ironic, too. He and his family moved here to begin a new life in Hinamizawa, and now, with this information, he and his family are now effectively trapped here, unless a cure for this disease is found. Again, irony. It was also very unfortunate that he got sick, just because he left the village for a few days to go to his relative's funeral in that one world. That's why Hanyu felt so bad for him that time, and kept on apologizing over and over. Although, no matter how much she apologized, he never heard her voice. Wait a minute. He left the village a few days ago to visit his relative's funeral and that... Wait a minute. Is this chapter 1's opening being referenced? Yeah, I think this is chapter 1's opening. So, that means we heard Hanyu apologizing to Keiichi. When Keiichi and I thought it was just someone else apologizing to another person. So, Hanyu's been foreshadowed right from the very freaking beginning. This turned into a long discussion, but these rules etched around Noishiro-sama's curse represent the ancient wisdom of how to cope with the Hinamizawa syndrome. Is there any way to use this mental disease for military purposes? The aforementioned doctor insisted there was, but the military didn't listen to him at all at the time. Well, it's looking to me like somebody in Tokyo who has access to a certain paramilitary faction wants to do just that, by all appearances. They were interested in developing a weapon that could make a dramatic change to the war efforts. They didn't have any money to spare for the research of this strange disease. In this way, research on Hinamizawa syndrome was abandoned. Then the war ended. Japan started its reconstruction under American leadership. However, some powerful people in the political world didn't want to accept the American way of thinking. Some of them were fired by the GHQ, but they still stayed on as advisors to the government, since Japan has a culture of respecting the elderly. Eventually, a political organization was formed, the object of which was to restore Japan to the way it was before the war. In the beginning, this organization was a very small group. It was just a gathering of 2 or 3 individuals who shared the same ideals, blowing hot air at a restaurant. Those 2 or 3 hit it off of each other and grew to the size of a class reunion. That group became a rather sizable organization, eventually becoming a political one. Does this group have a name? Well, it would be more accurate to call them a secret society. This secret society eventually came to be called by the name of the place where it was based: Tokyo. There were many mysteries about Tokyo. One thing I knew for sure is that it was composed of old men from Japan's political stage, ones with strong power to indirectly influence the government, and vast assets that meant they could work from the shadows. They were also connected to various corporations, and their goal was to return Japan to the way it was before the war. Of course, that was a pretty ridiculous goal. It was nothing more than an idea in their minds immediately after the war, back when they were still blowing their heads to the occupation forces of those white barbarians. Once Japan's post-war reconstruction began, Tokyo steadily became a shell of its former self. But it didn't totally become a shell. It called the fat. Japan regained its peace, and years passed. However, some people still continue to believe that Japan had been better before the war, and they were determined to return the country to those times. So this Tokyo plotted how to restore pre-war Japan from many angles. They approached the problem economically, internationally, and militarily as well. Japan has no nuclear armaments due to the 3 non-nuclear principles. In other words, this country has to brown-nose America as long as they hold nuclear weapons. The number one priority of Tokyo is to be independent from America. They want this country to be on equal footing, and to obtain a weapon of mass destruction that isn't nuclear in nature. Hence why they were hoping that Hinamizawa syndrome would be the perfect bioweapon. And yet, for some reason, at the time, according to you, they decided to abandon the research when they apparently realized they couldn't militarize it. But here's what I'm curious about. If this is true, then that would be strange for this paramilitary group, the Mountain Dogs and all that, to be carrying out this operation. Unless, of course, going by some evidence that we've seen, what Tomitake was injected with and all that, it looks to me like they found a way to weaponize this disease. That was the real reason why they started thinking about utilizing Hinamizawa syndrome. However, they couldn't study this disease openly. In order to utilize it for military purposes, they had to hide the existence of the disease itself. So they enlisted one young researcher, Kyosuke Irie. I need to make it clear that Irie isn't some far-right supporter of this secret society. He's just a young, capable doctor and an earnest researcher. He published an innovative thesis, but other academics thought he was too radical. However, that convinced Tokyo that he was the only researcher suitable to study Hinamizawa syndrome. As someone young and ambitious, Irie was thrilled to take on the project of studying this rare disease with a large budget, a military staff, and his own facility. But researching the disease would mean that he'd end up infected too. No one would want to take on such dangerous research. He really was too young. With his other option being wearing down his youth working hard at the night shift for a local practice, he wanted to answer the expectations of the sponsor who carefully selected him. In the end, Irie was able to uncover that, as hypothesized, the Hinamizawa syndrome was a unique infectious disease, and he developed both a treatment and a vaccine. Irie was extremely talented. The Irie Institute was formed to study the disease. Irie was nominally the head of the organization, but Tokyo still sent out a supervisor, because when all was said and done, he was just a researcher. That supervisor was Mio Takano. Takano's job at the Institute was to act as a go-between for Tokyo and Irie, manage the research progress, and preserve its secrecy. The latter was the most important part of her job. She had to do her best to prevent people from finding out that Irie was researching the disease, or even that the disease exists at all. The Mountain Dogs were formed for that purpose. They were under Takano's command, and their job is to prevent the Institute's secrets from being discovered. The Mountain Dogs are one special forces unit, specializing in unconventional warfare, and owned by Tokyo, with its vast influence on the SDF. Tokyo had set their eyes on the likelihood that a small elite squad of covert operatives would be a trump card in the anti-nuke era, so they vigorously investigated those options. This was a worldwide trend. Since the Cold War, everyone avoids sending troops directly to their enemy's doorstep. Japan was also trying to be part of that world. As a result, by 1983, even the police have been forming secret special forces units. Prefectural Police Squad 2, the ones who intervened when Reina laid siege to her school, changed their name to Zero Company, and grew into an anti-terrorism squad that handled hijackings around the Kansai airport area. The National Police Agency Squad 6 was formed as a counter-terrorism squad for Narita Airport 2, and they later changed their name to 7th Company as well. They theorized that in the world where nations possess nukes they can't use, small, elite special forces disrupting metropolitan areas would be the new way of waging war, so in 1977, they developed the SAT's predecessor, the Special Task Force SAP, to serve as the National Police Agency's trump card in securing the peace. Likewise, the Japan Coast Guard established their Special Task Force, the SST, in anticipation of unconventional warfare on the coast. There are several known special forces units in Japan. When they hear a phrase like Special Forces, most people tend to think of a movie or a comic book. However, these units actually exist and are protecting Japan in secret. During the famous incident of suspicious boats off the coast of Noto Peninsula, the news reported that the helicopter squad trained in gun battles was headed there, but was recalled because the suspicious boats sank. But that was because the Coast Guard's SST acted. However, the news never mentions the SST or any other special forces unit. All of these units were established after Tokyo made a suggestion about it to the government. Researching military tactics under the name of peace and order worked perfectly for Tokyo. But since the mid-century anti-war movement made people resent those forces, these special units have been kept secret as of 1983. Furthermore, these units are not all formed under the jurisdiction of the police. There are still many other military units that are kept secret from the average citizen. The Mountain Dogs are actually one of those special units. Surprise, surprise. They specialize in kidnapping, espionage, and preserving secrecy. You might as well call them an assassination unit. They were around during the dam conflict as well. Tokyo worked to put an end to the dam project because of the impact it would have on Irie's research. The Mountain Dogs were the ones who kidnapped the Minister of Construction's grandson. Well, holy shit! So the Sonozaki family didn't have anything to do with that kidnapping after all. Most people believe that the Sonozaki family was at the center of the movement, but in reality, the Mountain Dogs were responsible for many of the things the Sonozakis were accused of. In that sense, the existence of the Sonozaki family was an advantage to the dogs. Their main job after the dam conflict ended has been to continue keeping the disease hidden from the public. With the spread of information networks in the modern age, the media jumped onto any unusual incident and quickly aired it to the whole nation. Tokyo doesn't want the disease to be known nationwide, since they're trying to utilize it for their own purposes. The main task of the Mountain Dogs is to kidnap people suffering from Hinamizawa syndrome. They pose as gardeners, but in actuality, they patrol the village to make sure nothing strange happens. So how about that, Reina? Looks like those gardeners that were following you around that you were suspicious of in Chapter 6 weren't actually gardeners after all, like you suspected. Really, though, thinking about it now, I think the only thing that hasn't been proven yet here is that Hinamizawa syndrome is tied to aliens. Otherwise, it seems like Reina was pretty much right on the money with a lot of her theories, too. Again, irony. They're the ones who demon away people who go missing. They're probably also involved in some of the mysterious deaths, too. Probably that was exactly what I was thinking. The last important person is Jiro Tomitake. I don't know his real name. He was an auditor who was sent from Tokyo 4 times a year. He came to check on the progress of the research and outlined requests from Tokyo. He discussed the research budget with Irie, too. He also got the observation report from Irie on Irie from Takano. That was his purpose. Irie started out by studying the autopsy results of dead villagers, and he discovered many answers from that. In 1979, the Mountain Dogs kidnapped the culprit behind the murder of the construction chief, who was a terminal patient of Hinamizawa syndrome. The nature of the disease was dramatically clarified. So, these guys were involved with the first murder too. At least in regards to making that final suspect vanish. So in a way, I was half right. Their research made rapid progress after that, and they discovered a vaccine, medication, and other methods of treatment for the disease. At the same time, they continued to investigate how to utilize it for military purposes. One of the interesting findings of the research was that the pathogen can only be found when the patient is still alive. That's why we never found anything strange in Tomitake's autopsy report in the previous chapters. On top of that, they couldn't detect the presence of the pathogen at all unless they used a certain inhumane method. And what is this method? In other words, it's virtually impossible to detect a pathogen by normal means. It's probably a method that most people who do autopsies wouldn't even think of trying. It left almost no trace, and the unusual symptoms it produced seemed like voluntary behavior, so they conclude that the disease could be used to their advantage. However, Tokyo has been going through some changes. It's been almost 50 years since the war ended. The leaders and shadows behind Japan's government who ruled from the center of Tokyo began growing infirm and opening up seats, steadily passing their leadership to the new generation. The whole organization has started to shift. Of course, the purpose of Tokyo has stayed the same. It's still a secret society of ultra-nationalists who want Japan to be at the top of the world. However, their ambitions to start a war with America and take over the world has diminished. Tokyo has directed its priorities towards the economy, international affairs, and education. That doesn't mean that those ambitions are gone entirely, however. Several seniors still alive retain those ambitions. Tokyo continues to finance military research. But for the present-day Tokyo, Irie's research is actually something of an embarrassment. The new Tokyo is no longer interested in his project, and they announced that they're going to cut their budget as soon as those seniors pass away. However, Irie objected to that plan. He strongly appealed for the continuation of his research. This is what Okinogi was talking about. Irie is in disagreement with Tokyo. Irie's research has been making great progress. They discovered various treatments and testing methods, and he's even started to develop a treatment plan for the whole village. If they cut his funding, Irie's research would end without any results. Tokyo had a discussion with Irie through Tomitake, and they decided to shut down his research partially, but not fully. However, They told him to immediately stop researching military applications of the disease and destroy all the research data related to that. And yet, it looks like as though some faction had managed to secure some of this research along with a certain strain of the disease. How unfortunate. He had a little interest in weaponizing the disease anyway, so Irie accepted those terms right away. Tokyo probably believed that it was better to let him find a cure for the disease than to terminate the project entirely. At this point, Irie considers himself one of the villagers. Perhaps exterminating the disease infecting the villagers without their knowledge is his way of atoning for using the village to advance his research and reputation. Makes sense. Both Tokyo and Irie agreed to fully terminate his research as soon as he had discovered a way to completely eradicate Hinamizawa syndrome. Irie made a plan for the next 3 years, and he promised them that he would find a resolution by 1986 at the latest. The meeting they had this June was to discuss the plan and budget for the next 3 years. Which brings us back to the beginning. One theory goes that Irie is in opposition with Tokyo, and as his trump card, he's planning to kill Rika Furude. The other theory is that Takano killed Tomitaki, and as her trump card, she's going to kill Rika Furude. Well, that theory is certainly the correct one. I suppose I need to explain why Rika Furude can be a trump card. The answer to that lies in the ancient traditions of Hinamizawa. Supposedly, members of Furude family have the blood of Oishiro-sama in their veins. And I'm going to assume what this actually means, given the context of this research, is that it's actually a stronger version of the virus. Something to do with how the Furude family bloodline seems to affect the virus in some way, thus creating the unique strain. That's going to be my prediction. I explained earlier that Oishiro-sama was made up as a method for having people cope with the disease. However, that's actually not true. For the demons, the pathogens, to survive, a certain being must be present. That being is the successor to the Furude family line. The truth behind the advent of Oishiro-sama and the coexistence of humans and demons is that Oishiro-sama was actually the queen of the village. Huh. So Hanyu was actually a queen once upon a time. Maybe I should start referring to her as Your Highness. According to Irie's research, Rika is adored by the whole village not only because she's a charming little girl, but because she's the queen carrier. Well, looks like I was onto something, although it's not some... Although I guess you could call a queen a special strain of the pathogen. So, yeah, so I guess technically I'm right. Infected patients are unconsciously driven to protect their queen. Irie says that this is done with pheromones. Rika Furude's mother was also adored by everyone since she was little. However, as soon as she gave birth, people's attention quickly shifted to Rika, because the queen ended up going into her body through childbirth, right? Irie calls it the succession of the throne. The queen is a precious existence to people in this village. There are theories that carriers of the disease are actually unable to survive when away from the queen, not from the village itself. Irie's research indicates that the queen can only survive in Hinamizawa, and infected patients can only stay alive when they're around her. But this is just a theory. Surprisingly, however, the doctor who first discovered the syndrome was also aware of the existence of the queen. That doctor was also knowledgeable about Hinamizawa's culture, and he was interested in how much value the village placed on the Furude family. He theorized that the queen line in the Faroud bloodline might have the power to manipulate the whole village. The truth is still unknown, but perhaps the Faroud family really has held such power since ancient times. Miraculous power that would make them perfect for serving in the priesthood. Although the only thing Rika can do is be doted upon by the villagers. If all this is true, then the question is what would happen if the queen disappeared from the village? Well, to put it one way, the hive would go murderously and suicidally insane. During the war, a doctor prophesied that if the queen were to die, then all the infected would show terminal symptoms, and the whole village would be wiped out. He advocated for strict preservation of the queen's host. Rika is important to Tokyo not only because Irie found many answers after running tests on her body. If Rika Faroud dies, 2,000 people in Hinamizawa will turn into demons. It would happen too fast for people to even realize that they're getting sick. They will each be overcome with a violent persecution complex and start killing each other out of fear. Wait a minute. If just Rika's death by itself is enough to cause this whole thing to occur, then why did the village not tear itself apart from what we saw of Chapter 2's ending, where the village just simply... Well, then again, wait, no. It's because we didn't live long enough to see it happen as Keiichi. Never mind, I just answered my own question. This is why the mountain dogs are protecting the queen, Rika Faroud. Her death spells the end of the whole village. That's why Rika Faroud is a trump card for those who know that she's the center of the whole epidemic. This is the story of Hinamizawa. Our tale begins in June 1983. Tokyo's liaison, Tomitaki, was found dead of the disease even though he was vaccinated against it. On the same night, Takano was also kidnapped and murdered. Though I don't know for sure if she's really dead or not. Rika Faroud is also going to be murdered soon enough. While I've suspected Irie and Takano, this was my first time doubting Tokyo. I always thought that they were on my side. They had to be. My death would lead to nothing but disaster. At the same time, there might be people within Tokyo who could use my death as a trump card. I never considered that there were opposing factions within Tokyo. I guess I was naive enough to not realize that Tokyo had internal problems due to the generation gap. Anyway, I wouldn't be feeling this way if I didn't suspect that Takano might still be alive. I feel like I'm starting to see the greater picture. It's possible, too, that Takano is the victim, and Irie is the bad guy. The Mountain Dogs might be on my side, or they might be assassins who are trying to kill me. I was too scared to choose a wine that might be at risk of having something poisonous mixed in. In which case, I could be rest assured of a fresh, unopened bottle, even if it was a little bad. After telling everything to my friends, I finally realized I could only trust them and the police. I'm really dumb. I thought I was thinking so hard, but I never actually understood anything. After all this time, I made things clear just by talking about them with my friends. I never have thought it would make such a big difference. Told you!
み、僕の話はこれで終わりなのです。
Told you. As I thought, everyone was staring at me with their mouths open in shock. Even Ushi wouldn't believe a story like this. You might be surprised at what he'll believe. That's only normal. I'm sure I sound like a crazy person.
さとこ、僕たちが毎週診療所に研究のお手伝いに行っていますですよね。あれは入江の研究に協力しているだけではないのです。さとこの治療のためでもあったのです。
そうだ、そういえばさとこが病気みたいなことを言ってたよな。
私が
理科の話なら私だけじゃなく、この村に住むみんながその怪しげな病気にかかってることになるんじゃありませんの？でもどうして私だけがお注射しなくちゃいけないんですの？監督の作っている新型の栄養剤の実験じゃないんでございますの？
Well, it's probably because you were in a much later stage of the disease compared to most other people in the village.
さとこは一度末期症状を迎えてしまっているのです。だから日に2回のお注射がないとすぐに症状がぶり返してしまうのです。入江はさとこを救おうと特に熱心に研究してくれていました。でも毎日2回の注射をしなくてもいい体にはどうしてもいつか見つけると意気込んで今日も熱心に研究を続けてくれていますです。
冗談じゃないですわよ。私たち監督の怪しげな研究に協力してお金をいただいてるんじゃありませんの？あんな注射一生やれなんて冗談っぽいでございましたよ。
Satoko looked upset that she'd been completely ignorant of all this. Can you blame her? She also didn't want to accept the reality of having to manage her condition. Her fake laughter sadly echoed in everyone's ears. Keiichi opened his mouth to speak.
その注射を1回でもしないとあの日みたいになるんだな。
There was a day where she forgot to take her shot. She convinced herself that the principal was her uncle. Her fear escalated, and she thought her uncle came inside the school to take her back home. Once she feels that way, there's no turning back for her.
そうです。だから僕はさとこがお注射を忘れないように毎日しつこく言っているのです。
そんな信じられませんわ。大体何なんですの末期症状って。私だけそんなの嫌ですわよ。どうして私がいつそんな末期症状になったって言うんですの？
If I had a theory for that, I'd imagine it'd be sometime while you were living with your aunt and uncle, along with Satoshi. That household, well, for a pathogen like this, it'd be basically like Thanksgiving all year round for it, as far as chemical secretions caused by it are concerned. Satoko's face contorted as tears began to flow from her eyes. Although, now that I think about it, you had problems growing up even before you came under the custody of Teppei and his wife. So, I really don't know, now that I think about it, when exactly you became as sick as you were. Interesting. I shouldn't have said this. Satoko is starting to remember something she's not supposed to.
ごめん、さとこ。思い出さなくていいのです。あれは事故なのです。
Accident?
さとこは何も悪くないのですよ。
嘘ですわ。嘘ですわ。リカは全部嘘ばっかりなんですわ。
The others probably had no idea what Satoko was talking about. They don't need to know. They don't want to know about it because they're her friends. Rina gently touched Satoko's shoulder. She gently touched mine, too. I didn't miss a line, did I, that would explain what this is? No. Okay.
私たちはリカちゃんの話ちゃんと信じてるよ。ありがとうです。そして今まで自分一人でよくそれだけの大変なことを背負ってきたね。リカちゃんは偉いよ。たった一人で今日まで人に言えない秘密を背負ってきたんだね。
I never thought Reina would say something like that to me. My eyes were filling up with tears.
人に話せない秘密を背負うってのは悲しくて重いよね。私のはリカちゃんに比べたら全然大したことないけどさ、少しはわかるつもりだよ。
そうですね。お姉もよく頑張ってます。お姉になすりつけて楽させてもらってるからよくわかりますよ。
みんなは僕の話を疑わないのですか？
どうして疑うんだよ。全部信じるって言ったじゃねえか。むしろ村の秘密が解けたような気がして俺はすっきりしたくらいだぜ。
Same here.
そのひなみざわ症候群という病気は感染症で、村に住んでる人はみんなかかってるのかな？
はい、みんななのです。でも昔とは違います。鬼が淵村の頃に比べるとこの病気はとてもおとなしくなりましたです。だから別に遠くへ引っ越しても平気ですし、旅行だってへっちゃらなのです。
That would definitely explain why Shion was able to stay away from the village as long as she hadn't felt going nuts.
ただしものすごく低い確率で発症するってんだろ。俺怖くてもう村を出られねえな。
Sucks to be you.
もし病気にかかっても簡単な心構えで病気は抑えられるのです。それはとても簡単だけど難しいこと。
If you think you might be suspicious of someone, don't be. Continue to trust in them. When you become too suspicious of someone, that suspicion will degenerate into a persecution complex, and it will be too late. So long as everyone stays friendly and united, we will never have to worry about this disease. This disease starts with anxiety. Modern people don't believe in curses the way people long ago did. That might be why we're more tolerant to the disease.
なんだ。なら私たちは全然平気だね。
だな。俺たちは仲間で、部活メンバーで、家族なんだぞ。
I just thought of something dark. A disease like this that operates mainly on a person's anxiety would be a death sentence to anybody with an anxiety disorder, wouldn't it? Well, I thought I had something else to go with this, to say after this, but I guess I don't. I guess it was just a random little observation I just made.
間違っても仲間を疑ったりするもんか。だからリカちゃんの話、俺は丸ごと信じるぞ。そんなヤバい話をすれば、俺たちがその山犬って連中に消されるかもしれないって思ってずっと言えなかったわけだろ。
I nodded quietly. I don't want to think that the mountain dogs have bugged this room. But if Okanogi overhears this conversation, they will definitely kill not only me, but all of my friends tonight. That's true no matter who my enemy is.
まあ、だとするとすぐに部活メンバーは臨戦態勢に入った方が良さそうだね。状況を整理しよう。リカちゃんを殺すと大惨事になると信じてる連中がリカちゃんの命を狙う可能性がある。間違いないね。
可能性でなく必ず殺しに来ますです。
どうかな。リカちゃんが切り札ならそんな簡単に切っちゃう？
そうでございますわよ。切り札は殿下の宝刀。向かないうちが花ですもの。
Satoko's eyes were still swollen, but she had stopped crying.
甘いですね、さとこ。切り札は2枚以上ある時に限りすぐ1枚切ります。そうだね。人質は複数で初めて成立する。一人の人質の価値は複数の時に比べて格段に落ちるからね。
とにかく向こうの状況がさっぱりわからねえ以上、殺されないなんて楽観はありえねえな。
Everyone nodded in unison.
みーちゃんは山犬って人たちをどう思う？敵かな？味方かな？それは問題じゃないだろうね。僕は善良な狼ですって人に羊の番を頼むかい？
疑わしきは黒でございましたよ。その東京とかいう連中と全く関わりのない人たちに助けを求めた方がいいですわね。
だな。その意味ではリカちゃんが即警察に応援を求めたのは大石さんは俺たちの味方なんだよな。
はい。大石には全てを話してはいませんので、僕の命を狙っているのを連続開始事件の犯人、つまり村人の大石さんにも真実を話した方がいいと思うな。大人の力は重要だよ。リスクのある一手ですわね。かえって嘘くさくなって手を引かれるとまずいんではありませんの？
いや、大石さんには話そう。あの人今年が定年で昔殺された友達の仇を討つ最後のチャンスだって言ってた。だからきっとどんな嘘くさい話でも信じてくれると思うんだ。
うん。大石さんは聡子ちゃんを助ける時にも警察の立場でありながら私たちに協力してくれた。頼もしい味方になってくれると思うな。よし、大石には話そう。で、大石は今はしょ？
いえ、隣の県に行っています。高野の死体を確かめに。
ああ、隣の県の山の中でしたっけ？ドラム缶の中で黒焦げって話。でもなんでわざわざ大石ともあろう人が直々なんでしょうね。
高野の死体が違う可能性があるらしいのです。現地の県警が協力的じゃなくてあやふやなことを言ってるらしいです。
その山犬って連中は機密保持と情報操作が仕事じゃなかったっけ？あたしはなんだかその死体おかしいなって思うね。というかあの人おとなしく焼いたくらいで死ぬとは思えないんだよね。
もちろん入江が黒幕で高野を殺した可能性もありますです。山犬のおこのぎはそうだと言っていますです。
監督が黒幕ってことはねえだろう。あの人は悪い人じゃねえと思うんだ。
All he wants is just to find a cure for the big nasty bug and get a harem of maids.
そうですわよ。
Not necessarily in that order.
目と意と同発言禁止にしてくれれば基本的にはいい人でございますのよ。
私もひなみざわファイターズの幽霊マネージャーとして監督は黒幕なんて玉じゃないと思います。
Anyone who can coach a baseball team as good as him has got to be innocent.
どっちかというと利用される感じの人です。いい人すぎるというか。
誰も高野さんの肩を持ってあげない。
I know. It's almost like we're all one of a mind. All of one mind.
いやさ、監督と高野さんどっちが悪い人ですかって聞かれたらなあ。
Oh yes.
高野さんが聞いたら怒りますわね。
Everyone laughed as though we were in the middle of a club activity. If they're after my life, they'll kill everyone here. It's very possible that they'll all get involved in this mess, and they know that. That they could still laugh is really significant, I think. I started laughing along too.
客観的に見て、高野さんだけ隣の件で死体が見つかるのがすでにおかしいよ。富武さんを殺した風に偽装するなら、死体は絶対に見つからないところに隠す。山中で野焼きなんて見つけてくださいって言ってるようなもんだもん。
Well, yeah.
うん。レナもそう思うな。警察の管轄の及ばない県外で見つかった身元の確認しにくい焼死体を高野さんということにしようとしている気がする。その山犬って人たちはそういうのが本職なんでしょ？
なら構図が見えてきたぞ。山犬ってのは高野さんの部下なんだろ？山犬の隊長は監督が黒幕なんだって主張してるんだろ？高野さんと山犬ってのはグルだな。
富武さんのあの死に方は監督が殺したと思わせるためなんですわね。そしてそれがわかるのは東京だけ。そして本当の黒幕の高野さんの死体も見つかり、監督は東京に2人を殺したことを疑われて濡れ衣を着せられる。なるほど、これはなかなか凝った罠でございますわね。爪がいまいちでございますけど。
その濡れ衣ってのにも山犬って連中が関わってそうだね。
なあ、そうと分かったら監督に直接話を聞いてみないか。その方が早いぞ。
そうだね。監督が真実を話してくれるか嘘をつくか。
Well,
私目を見ればわかるから。
You are certainly the best lie detector we all have here.
ああ、レナさん嘘に敏感ですよね。
入江は山犬が監視していると言ってましたです。電話しても出られないか話せないかかもしれませんです。
なんだなんだ、聞けば聞くほど監督は濡れ衣臭いぞ。というか監督の身に危険が迫ってるんじゃないのか？
うん。私が山犬で監督に濡れ衣を着せようと思ったなら、余計なことを言われる前にご退場願うね。
Which would then explain his apparent suicide towards the end of Chapter 3. So I was right about that too. They probably killed him to keep him from talking to anybody. Just made his death look like a
死体に
suicide.
口なしだね。
After all, their specialty is misinformation and tricking everybody about a real person's cause of death. I think would fit within that description.
どうしよう。大石は隣の県警の話が終わったらすぐに戻ってくると言ってましたです。だから時間はわかりませんが、今日必ず来てくれますのです。
As one, everyone glanced at the clock. It was already past 6:30 p.m. and starting to get dark.
なんだか腹が減ってきたと思ったらこんな時間なんだな。
We'd usually call it here if it was a normal day. But everyone decided to stay until Ushi came back and discuss what to do.
ごめんねリカちゃん、電話借りてもいい？お父さんに帰りが遅くなるのを電話しないと。
そうだな、俺もお袋に電話しないとな。
あ、私もばっちゃんに今夜は出前でよろしくって電話しないとな。こんな時間に抜け抜けとそんなこと電話したら後でこってり絞られますね。
Poor Mion.
あと警察の人たちの夕食も考えてあげないとね。本家のツケで寿司でも頼むかね。
Maybe they like Italian food. Get them a pizza. Everyone had a sensitive reaction to the word sushi. Their stomachs were empty after all. The same should be true of those officers, too.
リカ、うちも出前にしますの？そんなお金の余裕はありませんでしたよ。
さとこ、みんなに自慢の野菜炒めでも作ってあげたらどうですか？
無理ですわよ。こんな大勢になんか作ったことありませんわ。
さとこの野菜炒めか。指さえ入ってなけりゃぜひ食ってみたいな。
レナもさとこちゃんのお料理久しぶりに食べたいかな。
At that point, the phone rang. Is it Ushi?
もしもし、フルデなのです。
よかった。ご無事のようですね。大石です。高野さんの殺害現場の用事を終わらせましてね。
Good.
今、沖宮に戻っている途中です。
Get here on the double.
途中のガソリンスタンドから電話しています。
それで、高野の死体はどうでしたか？
やりましたよ。やっぱりそうでした。現地の県警の資料がとんでもないイージーミスをしていました。連中間違いを認めやしない。ガツンと決めてやりましたよ。高野は車ごと行方不明です。富武殺しについて何か事情を知っている可能性が高いと判断し、つい先ほど高野の捜査を開始するよう指示を出したところです。ついにお社様のたたりの尻尾をつかみましたよ。ここから一気に引きずり出しちゃいます。
Well, if you want a shit ton of leads to help with your investigation, come here right now, and I'll serve you some stir fry to go along with your helping of clues. Ushi sounded so motivated. He'd finally found the hint he so desperately wanted. Could he actually solve the case, though?
それは土産話がとても楽しみなのです。
これからクマちゃんと一緒にそちらへお伺いしますので、詳しい話を聞かせてください。心当たりでもうさんくさい話でも何でも結構です。
はい、僕も全部話す決心がつきましたです。
おやおや、どんなお話が聞けるのでしょうかね。多分あと1時間ちょいぐらいでお伺いできると思います。ところで、お友達も来ているのですか？
はい、みんな心配してうちに来てくれましたです。
そうですか。皆さんは本当に素晴らしいな。私も皆さんと一緒にいてくれた方がいいと思います。賑やかなだけで犯罪の抑止効果は大きいものです。では今から向かいます。後ほど。
今の大石さんか？
はい、今から刑事と2人で来るそうです。はあ、この部屋にこんなに大勢なんて初めてだね。何人になるんだろう。
Well, count.
私たち6人に2人来て8人ですの？床が抜けそうで怖いですわね。
Hey there, Mopey. Where were you?
9人目なのです。羽生、聞いてた？なんだか今回は本当にすごいことになってきた。今回はいけそうですか？うん、いけるわ、絶対。絶対という言葉はなって当然、ならなければ失望する悲しい言葉ですよ。羽生はこの状況になってもやっぱり。でも死んでほしくないと思っていますのです。あんたのスタンスは分かってるわ。傷つきたくないから信じない。マイナス思考ならマイナスで当然。もうあんたと私の考え方の違いをとやかく言わないわ。あんたは見てなさい、傍観者らしく。はい、僕は傍観者ですから。でもリカを応援してますですよ。応援か、ありがとう。でも応援していいの？応援したのに負けると期待を裏切られない？ リカが意地悪を言いますです。
Yeah, well, sometimes the truth is a mean little bitch. We had a rather harmonious mood going. However, a feeling of unease was beginning to settle over us.
.腹減りましたね。途中で食事に寄った方が良かったんじゃないですか？
そうですね。もうすぐ8時か。お昼が遅かったから忘れてました。とりあえず話を聞いたらおたふくにお茶漬けでも食べに行きましょう。
警官を4人行かせてましたよね。交代を送らないと答える頃ですね。フルデさんが気を利かせて出前でも取っててくれればいいんですがね。
So, why are we switching to their perspective? Are we gonna learn some big plot revelation or something? Why am I getting a bad feeling right now? Ushi and Kumagai had passed through Okinomiya and were getting closer and closer to Hinamizawa. They hurried on their way, driving through the dark streets.
フルでリカの全てを話そうっていうのはとても気になるっすよね。
多分相当とんでもない話が飛び出しますよ。あの村はね、本当の名前は鬼ヶ淵村。鬼ヶ淵ってのは沼ですからね。沼の名を冠した村なわけです。
沼なだけにそこが知れませんね。フルでリカの護衛ですけどどうします？
彼女の話次第では秘密の場所にかくまった方がいいでしょうね。Hinamizawaってのは村が丸ごと魔物の腹中と同じなんです。あの村の中では何が起こるかわからない。とにかく聞いてみないことにはわかりません。
フルデ家の当主が命を狙われていて、園崎家次期当主はそれを守ろうと思っている。そんな状況下で誰がフルでリカを？あとは君吉家くらいしか勢力が思いつかないです。
君吉家には臭い話は聞いてないんだけどな。やっぱり村には信仰を軸にした勢力が隠れてるってのかな。沼の底がどうなってるのか楽しみです。
The road they were on was cutting through the rice fields, leading them to pass by the scene of Jiro Tomitake's murder.
高野が富武を放置した。そこまでは間違いないと思いますが、富武のあの異常な死に方は一体何だってんでしょう。鑑識のじいさま、覚醒剤は出なかったって言ったんですよね。
確かに薬物反応は出なかったそうですが、だからって絶対なかったって保証はありません。この世にはおかしな薬なんてきっと無数にある。それら全部が間違いなく使われていないなんて保証は誰にも出せませんよ。自分が知らない薬だから実在しないなんて、そんな傲慢は刑事が口にしちゃいけない。あったからにはあるんです。だからきっと富武に首をかき破らせる薬は実在する。そいつは犯人逮捕の折にたっぷり喋ってもらいますよ。あるいはフルでリカが話してくれると一番嬉しいんですがね。な、クマちゃんも今回の山で決めつける捜査がどれだけ冤罪を生み出してきたかよく分かったでしょう。
ありゃひどかったっすね。あいつうちの署に嫌がったら俺でも許さないところです。
結局最後まで間違いは認めてませんからね。
Probably because he was ordered to.
お隣さんはあくまでもあの死体は高野美代だったで通すつもりのようです。でもうちは高野美代生存でいきますよ。あとは県警同士のトップ会談で決着するでしょう。向こうのボンミスは確定してるんですから、認めると怒られると思って躍起になって上塗りしてるんですよね。いやはやそういう体質は改めないといけません。
The car suddenly shook. The concrete road had ended, leaving only gravel. Don't scare me like that. At the point where the gravel road begins, you're officially in Hinamizawa. They continue to drive through the woods for a while.
Kuma-chan, ちょいと止めて。
は?
Ushi had told him to stop immediately. Kumagai quickly slammed on the brakes. Their seatbelts tightened up, keeping them in their seats.
どうしたんですか?
あの車、何やってんだろうな。こんなところで。
No. Ignore it. Whatever you do, ignore it. You might get killed if they notice you. And I guess that would also then explain what happened, how you guys disappeared in, what was it? Chapter 3 as well? I'm trying to think. It was chapter 3 where it was mentioned that you two ended up vanishing under mysterious circumstances, right? If it's a vehicle belonging to the mountain dogs, especially one where Takano was hiding in, then that would then explain why you two vanished. So, in a way, I was right about this too. You guys vanished because you saw something you weren't supposed to. Although I guess maybe it's too early for me to make that to call that. Maybe this is just an ice cream truck. Please be an ice cream truck. Ushi tapped on the rearview mirror. There was a van parked just off the road. Rather beat up, it looked like it was used for a private company. There was no reason for someone to park their car here, especially at this time of night. Kumagai also thought it looked suspicious. The car seemed empty, but there was a light flashing in the woods nearby. Probably a flashlight.
不審ですね。こんな時間に。それにしてもよく気づきましたね。
いつも言ってます。刑事は四六時中目を皿にしてろってことです。何やってんだろうな。不法投棄かな。まさか死体埋めてるんじゃないだろうな。あるいは刺激不足のアベックかな。車のセンスからしてそれはないか。なあ、沖宮 PS どうぞ。聞こえてるかな。なはは。こんばんは、さようなら。
こちら沖宮 PS 感度良好です。
車両ナンバー紹介お願いします。獅子骨歯の4344。
不詳獅子骨歯の4344。少々お時間もらいますがよろしいですか。
Well, I heard the name Shishiboni in there.
お願いします。
おいさん、地図で見るとここ電話会社の施設がありますね。
電話会社の施設って何ですかそりゃ。
It was listed as a facility, but it wasn't staffed. It was just a place where machines were installed. Kumagai wasn't sure how telephone lines actually work, but either way it seemed like some kind of connecting device was located there.
普通のワゴンだよな。電話会社にゃ見えませんね。
電話会社ならそう書いた車で来るはずっすよね。
委託の伝説業者か何かの可能性もあります。直接聞いた方が早そうですね。
Please don't do it. Ushi wasn't sure if that was the case. After all, why would any phone company go to do maintenance so late at night?
ちょいと行ってみましょうか。フルデさんたちを待たせてますからね。パパッと行きましょう。
そうっすね。
His well-honed detective instinct was trying to tell him something. Ignore this lead. We need you alive. This feeling wasn't one that Ushi could easily explain. He has a strong sense that something was suspicious, without any real reasoning behind it. Ushi trusted that he could judge others' character with that sense.
ウグイス2よりウグイス1。車両が1台停車。2人降りました。おそらく刑事です。
Fuck!
そちらへ接近中、1分未満で接触します。
It was pitch black, yet they could see two newcomers clearly. They were probably using a night vision scope.
了解。全隊員注意せよ。ウグイス2から5はグリーンライトを待て。ウグイス7から8は前後 100m のクリアを確認せよ。
待機。ウグイス4、5。聞こえたな。ウグイス4、了解。
ウグイス5、了解。
ウグイス7、了解。
ウグイス8、了解。
ウグイスより本部。ウグイスより本部。電話設備工作中にトラブル。私服警官2名の職質と思われる。発砲許可を申請。
本部了解。許可を待て。
By the time Ushi and Kumagai reached the phone facility, they were being watched from all directions. There were 2 pairs of binoculars and 2 sniper rifles pointing at them. The Mountain Dog operatives worked in 2-man units, a sniper and spotter, to secure the means of retreat. They had all taken different positions, so they could shoot Ushi no matter where he tried to run. They were all in camouflage suits, hiding deep in the woods. Ushi, of course, had no chance of spotting them. The snipers had their rifles trained on the detectives' heads. Ushi and Kumagai had no idea that they were on the verge of losing their very lives. The snipers' rifles had their safeties on, but a flick of their thumbs would release them. In other words, they were ready to shoot if given the order. The detectives found the fence and machinery right behind the parked van. There was a sign there saying that it was the property of the Nippon Telegraph and Telephone Corporation, and another sign warning people to keep away.
どうもこんにちは。
すみません。作業中ですんで入らないでもらえますかね。
There were 4 men working there, wearing blue overalls. They had a toolbox open and were working on some wires.
どうも仕事中お邪魔してすみません。警察の者でございます。いえね、不思議なところに不思議な時間に車が止まっていたもので、どうしちゃったのかなと思いまして。
そうですか。うちらももうちょっとで終わりますんで。
おたくらどちらさんです？電電の人じゃないでしょう。
ああ、失礼しました。おこのぎ電気設備工事と申します。あれすみません。名刺を切らしちゃってるみたいです。
おこのぎ電気設備工事さんって会社どちらです？
Drop this, I beg of you.
はい。沖宮になりますけど。
会社の電話番号と住所を教えてください。
なんでそんなこと聞きますか？
電話番号忘れちゃいました？
Ushi looked at them with a piercing glare. Their response was very suspicious. Usually the vehicle of an electric company is full of various types of electrical equipment and repair tools. However, the van parked there had nothing inside and looked just like an ordinary car. Also, a company vehicle usually has the name of the company painted on it. But this one was just a plain van with no markings on it. None of that was the reason that Urushi found them suspicious, though. It was their attitude that bothered him. They didn't sound nor look like typical contractors. They were obviously not electricians. It was far too late in the day, and there were far too many of them. They were also clearly suspicious of Urushi. However, that was all he could tell just by looking around. He found them suspicious, but he had no idea what they were up to. One of the men told Urushi the phone number. Kumagai wrote down the number so he could ask the station to call and confirm it was real.
私らそんな怪しいもんじゃありませんって。
あんたら怪しすぎですって。一体何者です？委託業者なら作業写真用に作業前作業後とか書かれた黒板とかあったりするでしょう。そういうのもないですし、だいたいあんたたちの雰囲気が違いすぎます。
おまわりさん、そんな意地悪言われちゃかなわないです。勘弁してください。私ら早く作業を終えて帰らなきゃならないんです。
Judging from their progress, it didn't look like they'd be cleaning up anytime soon. In fact, it almost seems like they were just getting started.
もう化けの皮は剥がれてんだよ兄ちゃん。電気屋に化けるときはまずバイトして勉強してからにしな。
Ushi raised his voice threateningly. The members of the Mountain Dogs gradually started looking more and more annoyed. Ushi looked over their expressions and gave them a big wide grin. However, Ushi had no idea. He thought he could handle these suspicious people with no issues. Of course, in reality, they were horrific demons that had no chance. He had no chance against. Meanwhile, Kumagai was heading back to the car. He was intending to contact the police department. He was going to call the station using the radio. Then, in turn, the police department would contact the NTT. That way, it would become clear who they were really dealing with.
本部よりウグイス1発砲許可。
ウグイス7クリア。
Oh no.
ウグイス8クリア。
The sniper was still aiming at Kumagai's head as he headed back toward their car. The safety, that last line protecting Kumagai's life, was disengaged. The sniper put his finger on the trigger. He was wearing a glove with the fingertips cut out. The finger poking through the hole was very rough and merciless. For as soon as he slightly moved that finger, he would take someone's life.
ウグイス1より狙撃班オールグリーン。
Kumagai heard a quiet noise. It was similar to the sound of the jump rope that he used to use as a whip when he was little. And that was the last thought Kumagai had in this world. Kumagai collapsed onto the gravel. That was it. He didn't even twitch. Wushi was laying on his back on the concrete after getting shot in the chest. His lungs were filled with blood, which began to pour out of his mouth. Wushi only realized that he'd been shot when the world began to blur before his eyes. As his world keeled over, he saw a man in a work uniform leveling a gun at him. But it didn't matter anymore, as he started drowning in his own blood.
沖宮 TS より大石社どうぞ。先ほどのナンバーが判明しました。大石社どうぞ。大石社応答願います。電波悪いのかな。大石社応答願う。
出ませんね。大石さんが車両紹介？誰の車だよ。村人の車ですね。至って平凡な。何者だよ。大石さんが聞いてくるからにはただ者じゃないんだろ。突起事項欄は完全に空欄ですね。S 号指定もなし、減点もなしだし。
パッシングでもされて腹が立ったんじゃないの。あの人根に持つとなかなか忘れないタイプなんだよ。
ウグイスより本部2名を射殺。作業を再開。
本部了解。警官の車両処理は慎重に行われたし、サンサ ウグイスは警官2名を排除、作業を再開。
おやすみなさい、大石さん。私の尻尾をつかめてもう一息だと思ったでしょうに。残念ね。コーヒーをもらえるかしら。
どうぞ。しかし厄介な展開になってきましたね。R 宅には依然私服警官数名と、それから友人数名がいるそうです。R は自分が今夜殺されることに感づいているとしか思えません。作戦が漏れています。やはり決行は延期すべきでは。
明日の朝には死体が見つかっていないといけないのよ。お偉いさんたちの日程上、その日が一番都合がいいって話なんだから、作戦は決行します。
The crucial part of this final mission was the death of Rika and what came after that. They couldn't just kill her whenever they wanted. Doing it at the right time was vital.
山犬による過剰な警備にかえって過敏に反応したのでしょうか。
違うわね。漏洩じゃない。予言よ、あれは。富武の死と、そして私ですら知り得なかった偽装死体の状態まで知っていた。あの子は女王なのよ。Hinamizawaの頂上存在の頂点に立つ女王で、巫女で降臨したるお社様の血脈に連なる正当な末裔。神を欺くことなどできない。知られるのは宿命だったのよ。フルでリカをあっさり暗殺などできるわけがなかった。いいわよ、リカちゃん。あなたと私、どちらがお社様の伝説を受け継ぐにふさわしいか勝負しようじゃない。あなたの死はお社様のたたりの最後を飾り、この村の伝説のフィナーレを飾る。私の作り上げた物語はその時こそ本当のたたりになるの。
It was now past 8 p.m. Mion ordered some noodles for us, her treat. We also ordered some food for the 4 officers, and we all ate together. We were supposed to call it a night as soon as we talked to Wushi, but he's still not here. However, we all took it easy, assuming that they'd get here sooner or later. It's getting late. Once you get to Hinamizawa, there aren't many places to get something to eat. I'm sure they're having a quick dinner before coming here. However, the 4 officers seem anxious. They all had families, but Ushi didn't tell them how late they'd have to be out here. They're hoping that Ushi will bring other officers to relieve them so they can go home. They called the station, but all they said was that Ushi was on his way, and we should wait because he'll be here soon.
遅いね、大石さん。
渋滞にでも巻き込まれたんだよ。ちょうど帰宅ラッシュの時間帯にぶつかっただろうからね。
Well, if the River Styx has traffic, then I guess that technically wouldn't be wrong.
おまわりさんもお昼からずっといてくれてるんですのよね。交代が来てあげないとかわいそうですわね。
そうだな。何時に終わるのかもわからない仕事って疲れるもんな。
警察の人には休んでもらって、私たちが夜景にでも立ちます？
It would be a bad idea. The mountain dogs would not be scared at all by a bunch of school kids.
サトコのトラップワークで不審者の接近を阻むとか。
That wouldn't work here, because then they'd see the traps being deployed.
甘いですわね、シオンさん。ここは私とリカの家なんでしたよ。常に二重三重のトラップが張り巡らせてありますわ。そうなんだ。神社で遊ぶときは注意しないとね。
With our stomachs full, the mood in the house had returned to a light-hearted one. True, We shouldn't be so relaxed, but knowing that Ushi would be here shortly made us feel relieved. But he's so late. He said he'd be here in an hour. Mion mentioned he might have got stuck in traffic. But I'm sure Ushi was considering that. That's why he told me it'd take him about an hour. And now it had been 1 hour since the time Ushi was supposed to get here. I want to believe that he's getting something to eat on the way, but I'm starting to get concerned. Ushi still hasn't shown up. It's almost 11 o'clock. The officers are completely exhausted. They even started to smoke cigarettes outside. My friends are becoming tired too. Satoko is yawning. It's way past our bedtime. Everyone else is getting tired and sleepy. We've been spending our time watching TV and reading manga. I can feel my fear succumbing to sleepiness. Today is almost over. I'm going to survive the day I'm supposed to die. Does that mean that I escaped my deadly fate? Not even close. No. I'll have to fight endlessly from tomorrow on. I was going to discuss that with Ushi. Since he's not here, I don't know what to do from this point on. Suddenly, the phone rang, breaking the silence.
大石さんか？
もしもし、フルでなのです。
夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。沖宮署の小宮山と申します。すみません。うちの大石ですが、そちらにおりますか？
いいえ、僕たちもずっと待っているところなのです。
そうですか。わかりました。申し訳ございませんが、そちらに行っている警官に今から応援が行くので、引き継いだら祈祷するようお伝えいただけますか？
わかりましたです。それで、大石はどこに？
夕方頃、直接そっちへ行くと連絡があったきりだったので、てっきりそちらへお邪魔しているものと思っていました。大石と交代で警官たちが戻ってくることになってたのですが、いつまでも戻らないのでどうなっているのかと思いまして。
That's what I'd like to know, but arguing with the man on the phone wouldn't accomplish anything. I hung up and gave the message to the officers downstairs. It looked like everyone already heard our exchange on the phone.
どうしたんでございましょうね。遅いにも程がありましたよ。
何か重要な仕事があったりして道草でも食ってるとか？
それなら電話すると思うな。これから行くって電話したんだよ。これだけ遅くなったら絶対に電話してくれると思うな。
まさか東京って連中に襲われたとかか？
まさかと言いたいところですが、リカちゃまの言うような連中が相手なら絶対そんなわけないとも言い切れないのが怖いところです。多分急用が入ったんだよ。それで電話をするのを忘れてるんだと思う。向こうも大の大人、それも天下の大石だよ。
Well, he's not tough enough to withstand sniper rounds, unfortunately.
そうそう簡単には消されないって。
Oh, how reality will betray your expectations.
来るなら早く来てほしいですわね。ふぅ。
Satoko yawned. Everyone laughs, but some of them are trying not to yawn themselves. We can't stay up forever. We decided we'd call it a night once the replacement officers arrived. I'm sure I survived past the time I was supposed to die. That's probably because the police were protecting me. Perhaps both Takano and the mountain dogs are also on my side, and they took care of the murderer. I don't know who is changing my fate. Maybe my fate hasn't changed, and I'm going to get killed soon anyway. I don't know if it's because of the police or because of the mountain dogs, but the only thing I know for sure is that I'm still alive. Soon, I heard the noise of someone walking on the gravel on the shrine grounds. One of my friends suggested that it might be Ushi, but I doubt it. I don't want to expect him and be disappointed when it's not. I'm starting to think like Hanyu.
こんばんは。沖宮署から参りました。小宮山と申します。
It wasn't Ushi. Two of his fellow detectives had arrived instead. They're going to stay downstairs and have the 4 officers return home. They also told my friends to leave.
あとは私たち警察がいますので、どうぞ皆さんは家に帰ってください。ご家族の方が心配しますよ。
みんなありがとうです。刑事さんたちが来てくれましたし、もう大丈夫なの。
本当に大丈夫？邪魔でなければ私たちも泊まるよ。
大丈夫なのです。第一、お布団も寝巻きもないのです。
Have them stay with you, please.
じゃあ明日、これからはなるべくリカちゃんと一緒にいるようにしよう。部活はリカちゃんの家でやるっていうのでどうかな。
You sure you want to do club activities while we have a freaking paramilitary group looking to snatch Rika away?
あら、それなら素敵でございますわよ。
That'd be suicidally stupid.
僕たちの家の床が抜けてしまうかもしれませんです。
違いねえな。
じゃあリカちゃま、私たちこれで帰りますけど、用心、暗闇で一人になるなんてことは絶対しないように。
気をつけますです。
じゃあね。また明日。
はいです。また明日。
See you tomorrow. Am I really going to see them tomorrow? I have no clue. I've tried so many things over the past 100 years. I've done many things, and I have memories of most of them. That's why I feel so scared on the day I die. It's the only day that I have no memory of. I don't even know if I'm approaching or escaping my death right now. All I know is that this fear is going to continue until I find some kind of solution. As I started getting ready to go to bed, Satoko suggested that I should sleep in my regular clothes rather than my pajamas. Well, if you got a bolt, then that'd be handy. She was thinking I should remain dressed, just in case someone tries to attack me in my sleep. It sounded ridiculous, but she was just trying to be considerate. I decided to do what she told me to. Satoko seemed so sleepy until a few minutes ago, but she suddenly started passionately explaining to me all the traps she set on the shrine grounds. She assured me that strangers will end up trapped if they try to sneak inside this building. To someone else, it might sound like she was just trying to brag, but Satoko was trying to make me feel better. After everyone else left, she noticed how scared I looked. Satoko's kindness, and everyone else's kindness. I feel it was the right decision for me to talk to my friends. Even if that won't end up changing my fate.
Rika.
Hanyu showed up again. She looked upset, so she was probably still thinking that I could get killed at any minute. But I'm actually starting to feel a little better. I might get killed tomorrow, but I feel like I can rest safely at least tonight. I'm more concerned about the fact that Ushi didn't show up. Still, even if he didn't, the other detectives are here, and will stay on guard downstairs without sleeping. As long as they're here, I think I'll be safe tonight.
どうしたの？お腹でも空いたの？出前じゃ甘いのはないからね。冷蔵庫のジュースでも飲む？
Hanya would usually cheer right up when I suggested drinking some juice. But not this time. Her face looked pale, as if she wasn't even alive. Do you know what happened to Ushi? Something out of the ordinary had clearly happened.
どうしたの？もうすぐ時間がやってきますのです。
Oh. That sounded far more like a declaration than a prediction. Even Hanyu doesn't have any memories of my death. There's no way she can tell when I will be killed. However, she sounded so certain just now. Perhaps we can feel it in the very cells of our body. Our bodies understand fate better than we do. Up until now, I felt reassured that we could get through it if somehow we were all together. But as I clung to that life preserver with a hole leaking air, I was starting to drown in a sea of despair and struggling to keep my head above water. No, I can't let myself feel that way. I have to believe.
大丈夫よ。私は抗う。たとえ明日殺されるとしても、今夜殺されるという運命にだけは抗う。
Hanyu just gave me a look of faint sadness. That silence told me that my pitiful hope was going to push me down into a futile reality. I stared at Satoko as she continued to brag about her traps. If I'm getting killed shortly, Satoko won't be safe either. I quickly interrupted her talk about traps. The time was 1 in the morning. As it's hardly a big city, 1 a.m. in Hinamizawa is the middle of the night. The darkness here gets very deep. There was light leaking out from the first floor, where 2 detectives sat on guard, but everything else was pitch black. Even the moonlight seemed indistinct.
予定時刻です。1階には刑事2名、2階は消灯してすでに1時間以上が経過します。本部より3佐、結構。
こんなに月の綺麗な夜だもの。始めなさい。
刑事は排除でよろしいですか？
そうね。今夜古出神社にいた人間は全てが忽然と姿を消し、それでいいわ。
本部より大鳥、作戦開始。保証の刑事2名は実力で排除せよ。なお発砲は許可しない。繰り返す、発砲は許可しない。本部よりウグイス、大鳥が作戦を開始する。電話線を遮断せよ。
ウグイス了解。遮断する。
They have been working to disable the phone lines, just in case their target tried to contact the police during the attack. That mission was what Ushi happened to bump into.
ほんじゃ、始めるかいね。大鳥湾より全隊員へ。突入準備。1階の刑事2名と2階の同伴者1名を排除せよ。痕跡を残せん。発砲禁止。ガスも使えんね。テーサーを使え。単銃で武装してるぞ。撃たせるな。
おこのぎ、素人相手に手こずらないでよ。
まあ仕事ですんで。大鳥7、8前進。バックアップは周辺警戒を厳重にされたし。
大鳥7、よく前進する。
The 2 men in uniform slowly approached the building. The mountain dog's uniform is gray, so it didn't blend in with their surroundings at all. However, it doesn't look suspicious as real camouflage suits. Of course, they look suspicious enough for creeping up to the house like that anyway. They could both see light leaking from the door and hear the voices of the detectives. Rika would typically use this sliding door to get inside. The door was locked, but the mountain dogs had obtained a spare key a long time ago. They put the key in the keyhole, but it wouldn't go in smoothly. They were certain it would make some kind of noise when they turned it. The detectives would notice them the minute they did that. They'd have to rush inside and defeat them in one swift burst. Phoenixes 7 and 8 glanced at each other.
大鳥7より本部、 準備位置に到着。突入指示を請う。
高野です。綺麗に決めるのよ。行きなさい。
了解。突入する。
He turned the key in a hurry and opened the lock. By the time the detectives turned around, the door was already open and the two mountain dogs had stepped inside. They had aimed their weapons at the detectives while the latter were still turning around. In a fight like that, the first 2 seconds are the most crucial moments. The detectives collapsed, making minimal noise. There were needles stuck in their bodies, and those needles were connected via wires to the attackers' guns. In other words, the weapons those two weren't ordinary guns. They were stun guns in the shape of firearms. Instead of bullets, they shoot out electric needles that electrocute their victims into unconsciousness. Normally they would be non-lethal weapons that allow the shooter to capture their victim without harming them much, but their tasers had been modified. The two dogs started walking up the stairs as soon as they confirmed that the detectives were no longer breathing. But in the next moment, they heard a loud noise above them.
こちら大鳥店 R 以下2名が感づいた。2階の窓から飛び降りたぞ。裏の茂みへ逃走している。大鳥4、5、そっちへ行くぞ。制圧しろ。
大鳥4、沈黙。
Phoenix 4 spotted the two girls and started after them, but he suddenly stepped on something hard. With a chief-sounding explosion, the area was filled with smoke. That was the trap Satoko had set using firecrackers. They had proven to be a very fortunate idea. The mountain dogs dropped to the ground, assuming they were under fire. That gave Rika and Satoko a chance to escape.
なんなんですのあいつらは。リカの言う東京なんですの。多分ね。いいから走って。捕まったら殺されるわよ。
どうした応答しろ。今の音は何だ。
こちら大鳥5、銃撃を受けた模様。R は突破した。追撃する。
くそ、感触玉か何かだ。畜生め。
さとこちゃんね。やるわね。
ああ、情けな。近場の班は急行しろ。人家に逃げ込まれたらアウトだぞ。
大鳥18発見した。追跡中。応援を送れ。
二人は土地勘が強いわよ。早く抑えないと確実に見失うわ。
Come on, you can do it. Run! This wasn't a game of hide and seek. It was a game of tag. Several men in uniform were chasing after Rika and Satoko. They weren't idiots, so they didn't waste energy on a futile act of shouting, "Wait." This was a quiet, deadly game of tag in the middle of the night.
どこへ行きますの？バラバラになって追っ手を振り切りましょうです。落ち合うのはミーの家。地下の隠し部屋なら安全だし、外部と連絡も取れますです。
Satoko had no idea that Mion had a basement in her house, but she didn't have time to ask anything about it under her current circumstances. All she did was nod. The next moment, I felt my left foot catch on something, and I fell down to the ground. I must have tripped on a rock or a piece of concrete. Move, move, move!
リカ！サトコは逃げて！あんたも殺されちゃう！
But Satoko wouldn't move on without me. She came back to lend me a hand. I stood up without her help, but this cost us too much time. One of the men had almost caught up with us. I didn't know what to do. But Satoko, upon seeing him, quickly reacted. Satoko ran toward him and kicked him with all her might. Her foot had landed right in his face. I wish I had a camera. You and me both! But there were two more of them right behind the first man. I can see them clearly now. They're the gardeners from that landscape company. They're wearing the same uniforms Okanogi was always wearing. They must be the mountain dogs. Now I'm certain that Takano is the culprit. And now that I know that, I can do something about it in the next world. But if I die now, will I lose my memory again? I can't die now. I need to survive so I can keep my memories. Satoko took something out of her pocket and threw it at them. It was something like sand, and it blinded them. However, even that could only buy us a few seconds. Satoko tried to run, but she froze as soon as they aimed their weapons at us. Their stun guns are only shaped like firearms. Satoko, not knowing that, thought they were real guns. Knowing that she'll be shot if she turned and ran, Satoko tried to attack them instead. Of course, there are 3 of them. Most would think it impossible to drive them off, but Satoko didn't think about that. She had a 100% chance of dying if she tried to run. Then she might as well fight back, because she might have a 1% chance of defeating them. Satoko is determined to save me, even at her own expense. But I can't stay in this world if it means losing Satoko. I'm dying anyway. I'd rather die for Satoko's sake than lose her. But another me was shouting in my mind, if I don't survive this, I'll lose this memory. If I die without keeping this memory, this life and everything I've learned will all be wasted. Should I escape and leave Satoko behind? That's right. I should use this experience to my advantage in my next life. I should just let go of her in this world.
無理ね。それができる魔女なんかになれるものか。
But I know in my heart, there's no way I can win against these guys. I'm sure their backup will get here if we take our time to fight them. Should I fight them for her? Or should I leave so I can confront my true enemy? Oh, another choice. What the hell?
Hmm? どうせ怒られるならもう
僕理科のいない仲間が悩んでいるのに
気がいつもと同じように今日を生きる。入江が
まあ入江所長はどこか後ろめたそう。今回の一件が解決するまでです。地域に溶け込むのが仕事ですから。
すぐに
了解。
もし疑われたらおとなし。
どうぞです。おトイレも貸しますです。ただある羽生もついみんなで理解でも期待するかしないかは僕の心の中で好きにさせてくださいなのです。
あんたただ
話してもらうぜ。
理解
それと
ねえ理解
みんなケースは
そういう
となる富武
俺あまり
何か村とか富武さん
でも
リカちゃん
多分です
どうして富武さん
いいのではその病気の名前は仮なのか正式なのか分かりませんですが Hinamizawa 症候群と呼ばれていますです。僕のさ
そう
理解でもあんな注射
その注射
だからいつおみんだか
ただ
それはなら
そんなヤバい
可能理解向かない
切り札一人
とにかく
敵僕
そのお音変え
だが
頼もたかげそ山めはい
いやさ
たか
なら高野
止めつめ
その
監督で
という
余計
だから
なんだか
音
そうだな
本家の
さ
指
ここか後ほど
今なん床がなんぜお理科が意地悪
フルデさん
沼のそっかいやはい
は
あの車なで直接
そうっすね
そちら本部了解許可を待て
電話番号電気屋に化けるときは
ウグイス8ウグイス1より急げ
いや作戦や
ちょうど交代
何時
常に神社で遊ぶときは注意しないとね。
おい
おい人
何
これだ
まさか
そう
小宮
大部活僕気をまた明日理科冷蔵庫もうすぐ時間
遮断す
前進する突入する
大鳥4沈黙
多分ねいいから捕まったら殺される
今 R は追撃
佐藤や
お先生
早く抑えないと確実に見失うわ
地下の隠し部屋なら安全だし外部と連絡もあんたも殺されちゃうとりゃ無理ねそれができる魔女なんかになれるものか
Yeah, you know what? As much as I'd really hate to leave things on a... What the hell? Okay, I guess that was on a timer? Well, whatever. Anyway, as much as I hate to leave things here on a cliff note like this, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end the episode here, and we can... and then we can decide on what choice I'm going to make regarding our circumstances here in the next episode. Shit ton of exposition we just learned, and well, we appear to be at the end game. Of some, or at least we're getting damn close to it here. So I'm really curious to see how this is all going to play out next time. So, yeah. Besides, it's also getting kind of late for me, so that's also another reason why I feel like I should probably stop things here. And 3 hours is I feel also a pretty long time enough for a video as it is. So, yeah, I hope you guys will forgive me for this. But, yeah, we can resume this cliffhanger in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Higurashi and the Crack High Chapter 7. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will see you all next time. Take care.